Thank you. Thank you all. Ladies, thank you so much. Mr. Perez, thank you. And Janelle and your staff, thank you. So today we want to recognize 2 members of the new Preparedness Program with our Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. We have Dana Coleman and Mina Bonina here today. These 2 individuals became part of the Americorps in our own preparation program back in February and quickly began enhancing readiness throughout our city. During their short time here, they have participated in 8 local events, produced and provided preparedness education packages to more than 1,000 people, and developed a preparedness package that is now distributed to the new city employees. They have also developed emergency-specific preparedness trainings, such as extreme heat preparedness and various other educational tools that can be used in future events and training. On behalf of the City of Killeen and its community members, I want to thank both of you for helping us to better prepare for the whole community. Thank you. I left my glasses on the dais. Please come up.
All right, so as they get their plaques, just a little bit, the Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management is committed to increasing the community's resilience by improving the capacity of our communities across the city of Killeen to prepare for, respond to, and recover from disasters by acting as educators through the development of a preparedness program. So our efforts to build the preparedness program included partnering with the nonprofit organization Equal Heart, which is where these 2 members came from. And the Equal Heart annually places more than 300 Americorps members across 16 states. And the City of Killeen Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management was awarded 2 of these member slots for this year. So Americorps is a national organization with a network of more than 70,000 members that serve communities to meet critical human needs across various areas of service. The mission of Americorps is to improve lives, strengthen communities, foster civic engagement through service and volunteering. And again, just on behalf of the City of Killeen, we thank y'all so much. And we know y'all's time is almost up with us, but y'all have done some great work that will last a while. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, good. All right, thank you both. Sir, thank you so much.
Tonight it's just discussion.
Okay. It is 5 o'clock, and I know Councilwoman Gonzalez is here, and also Councilmember Alvarez. 5 o'clock is starting. You're welcome. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for coming out to our City Council workshop. Let the record show that Mayor Pro Tem Cobb is not present, nor is she on Zoom. So we have our citizen comments. We'll start off with the reading on the governor's standards and expectation. Could you read those, Mr. Cagle?
Yes.
I know. Thank you.
So I'm going to read Section 180D, 1 through 6. Excuse me, that's not right. It says 180. Yes. Okay. 180D, Section 1 through 6, Rules of Decorum. Persons attending city council meetings should observe the same rules of propriety, decorum, and good conduct as they would show in a courtroom, a place of worship, or any other serious or solemn occasion during which matters of importance are being considered. Visitors will refrain from engaging in chatter, private conversations, and from making other distracting noises while the council is in session. Phones and other electronic devices should be set to off or silent mode. Visitors should not applaud, boo, clap, or otherwise audibly express approval or disapproval of the speech of another person in a manner likely to disturb the meeting. 2, addressing city council. Persons wishing to address the city council on any matter listed on the agenda may be recognized by the chair, provided the person has completed a citizen speaker registration form and presented it to the city secretary prior to the beginning of the regularly scheduled city council meeting or immediately following their address at city council. Speaker shall approach the lectern and give his or her name and city of residence before speaking. Speakers shall address the mayor and city council with civility that is conducive to appropriate public discussion. All public comment should be addressed through the chair. Each speaker will be allowed 4 minutes to speak. The chair may allow a 1-minute extension. If requested by the speaker at the end of the original 4-minute period, a majority vote of the city council is required for any subsequent time extensions. No person shall be allowed to address the city council more than one time per agenda item. Persons may not engage in discussions with the city council or staff during council deliberations unless specifically asked a question by a council member. Persons who have been asked a question by a council member must be recognized by the chair before being allowed to speak. The chair may end any question and answer session between council members and a member of the public in order to facilitate the order of business. Printed materials. Persons may present printed material to the city secretary to distribute to the city council during a meeting. Number 5, no disruption. Persons attending city council meetings shall remain seated or may stand in the back of the room and come and go so long as it does not disrupt the meeting. Persons in attendance shall not carry signs or placards. No person attending any city council meeting shall delay the proceedings or refuse to obey the orders of the chair. Number 6, removal. Disturbances, transgressions of the rules, or disorderly conduct in the city council chamber or other council meeting room may cause a transgressor to be removed from the meeting. The chair of the meeting shall exercise control over persons who disrupt the meeting in the following order of action. A, call the person to order, advising that person of the infraction. B, advise the person that the infraction must cease immediately or the person will be ordered to leave the meeting. And C, order the person to leave the meeting. A police officer may remove the individual or individuals for disrupting a meeting as authorized by Texas Penal Code Section 42.05.
Thank you, Mr. Cagle.
Yes, ma'am.
Now we will have citizen comments. You'll have 4 minutes to speak on items on the agenda, and council, you will have 1 minute if you would like to respond. Melissa Brown. Good evening. You have 4 minutes.
Section 1-80, decorum from the governing standards and expectations. Mayoral responsibilities, the mayor shall have a voice in all matters before the council, but shall only vote in accordance with city charter provisions, which means that if there is a tie, the mayor is responsible for breaking that tie vote. Chair, the mayor shall serve as the chair of all meetings. The mayor pro tem shall preside in the absence of the mayor. Preserve order and decorum. The chair is responsible for preserving order and decorum and shall keep the meetings orderly by recognizing each member for discussion and encouraging civil debates among members and keeping discussion limited to the agenda item being considered. Encourage participation. The chair will encourage council members to participate in council discussion and give each member an opportunity to speak before any member can speak again on the same subject. And we'll go down to Section C, council responsibilities, be prepared. Attendance at work sessions and meetings is essential to the effective execution of a council member's duties. Decorum, when addressing an agenda item, a council member shall first be recognized and shall confine comments to questions under debate. Enforcement of policy, any council member may ask the chair to enforce the policy established by the council. There is nowhere in these governing standards and expectations that say every single week, even when it says the agenda and the order of the meetings to preside, anything that says read off the expectations for citizens prior to the beginning of each meeting and end it with making sure we emphasize according to the penal code. There's also nothing that says you have to sign up before 5 o'clock. Not on here, not on any place else. Oh, I don't see decorum on the agenda either, saying read off the decorum. So it's not in your governing standards, it's not on your agenda. There's nothing in your governing standards that say have a consent agenda where the public will not get to see publicly and hear the presentation from staff members on all of these items. They're for tonight, 9 items that add up to hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars that the citizens won't get an official presentation from the city staff about in front of the council. As far as being prepared, I believe that's part of the expectations. As an elected official and representative, it is expected you will respect the opinions of fellow council members, be well informed on issues, and participate in deliberations, accept responsibility to attend all council meetings and workshops, not disclose information which is confidential, make sure every attempt to resolve any conflict with a fellow council member prior to bringing it to the attention of the council, assist in preserving order and decorum, neither by conversation or otherwise. The council members are not supposed to be having conversation among themselves either, and that includes the mayor and the city manager, according to the same decorum that we are being asked to follow, and we're not being asked to make any decisions on anything that is being discussed. If you're talking, you're not listening to the presenter. How are you making an informed decision? One of the biggest problems I have with the reading of that one particular part of decorum, each council member will endeavor to make the citizens comfortable and part of the process at meetings. When they feel like they're being harassed and intimidated, they are not comfortable. Make visitors comfortable by being courteous and respecting their opinions. Strive to maintain a tone of voice that is courteous and sincere, and you all have these governing standards. Unless you want to change them by a majority vote, I would sincerely suggest that we get rid of the consent agenda for the workshops and we stop reading decorum. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want some clarification for the residents that the mayor and the city manager can put items on the agenda. We have new people, residents coming in, maybe somebody else with a business or planning and zoning. So we want to reiterate our governor's standards and expectations when it comes to decorum. So we have that right to put whatever we want, and the council members also. They can turn it in for 2 weeks, and we can put it on the agenda. Shirley DeConte. Good evening, ma'am. You have 4 minutes. Good evening.
OR 23008, we must revisit this ordinance that was written by one person, gave the same person sole appeal process with final decision-making, and limited a number of cats in a feral colony. This is part of an ordinance that was introduced to City Council On April the 4th, 2023, the former Assistant City Manager, along with Madam Mayor, justified this ordinance by constantly referring to numerous nuisance complaints in which no evidence of this was ever brought forward. The Animal Advisory Commission had a special call meeting in February 2023. The former Assistant City Manager told the City Council that in February meeting, a vote was taken and they could not reach a consensus, that the vote was 3-3. The truth is that the vote was 4-2, and that was on restricting 6 cats to a colony. They never voted on the ordinance, as confirmed by the paper I have provided each of you. On April 4, 2023, approximately 81 minutes into the meeting, Councilman Adams asked the former Assistant City Manager, saying, what was the veterinarian's take on the number? She replied that she, Green, and Dr. Joyner voted for 6 cats to a colony. And to clarify, Dr. Joyner is a state-mandated veterinarian for the Animal Advisory Committee. There is no nice way to say this, but according to Dr. Joyner's response in the text, the former city manager lied to City Council to ensure a yes vote for the ordinance. If you recall, during citizens' comments on April 4, 2023, approximately 12 minutes, 20 seconds into the City Council meeting, Jan Holliday, a current member of the Animal Advisory Committee, stated that her understanding was that discussion on the ordinance would continue at April's Animal Advisory Committee stated meeting scheduled for April 13th, 2023. This ordinance was introduced to you accompanied with lies in order to get a yes vote, in which it did get on April 11th, 2023, 2 days before the Animal Advisory Committee was to meet again to continue discussion. This ordinance is invalid and must be removed from Chapter 6 in the Code of Ordinances. I and others think it's time to revisit discussion of adopting a code of ethics to eliminate situations like this. And I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
I don't think there's any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we did receive from Ms. Del Conte some text messages or email, but it's all, half of it's cut off, so you really don't know the whole story on what Dr. Michael Joyner stated, because it's not all there. Anka? Good evening, ma'am. You have 4 minutes.
Council members, Madam Mayor. First, I'm going to speak on the marijuana ordinance and the legal services agreement. Once again, taxpayers are asked to pay an unspecified amount of money to defend an ordinance that goes against state law. Let's talk a little bit about state law. According to Texas State Penal Code, Section 1221, Class A misdemeanor, an individual adjudged guilty of a Class A misdemeanor shall be punished by a fine not to exceed $4,000, confinement in jail for a term not to exceed 1 year, or both. That is pretty serious, unless it happens in Killeen and the misdemeanor is possession of marijuana. Those people go free. The penal code does not apply to them. Per Killeen ordinance, Killeen police officers shall not issue citations or make arrests for Class A or Class B misdemeanor possession marijuana. Any violation of this chapter may subject a Killeen police officer to discipline. The city of Killeen will not punish an individual guilty of a Class A misdemeanor according to the penal code However, the city allows for the punishment of the police officer who follows that penal code. This potentially means that any convicted offender serving time in jail right now for misdemeanor A can now sue the city of Killeen because they're being punished according to state law, while others go free, even though they're guilty of the same level of offense. Here are some examples of misdemeanor A offenses. Assault. A person is guilty of assault if they intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly cause bodily injury to another. Class A misdemeanor. Criminal mischief. If the loss is between $750 to $2,500, that's Class A misdemeanor. Burglary of vehicles. Class A misdemeanor. Anyone arrested for these crimes since the Killeen marijuana ordinance took effect can now potentially sue the city of Killeen for not being treated equally under the law. Why should they be in jail while others guilty of the same level of offense are free? Next topic is regarding Chapter 6 of the Killeen ordinances. I do not know what changes are proposed, but I do know there are some significant issues with this ordinance. Section 6-7 mentions compliance with federal, state laws. The keeping of an animal cannot be in violation of any federal, state, or city laws. However, in another section, it states city facilities and operations are exempt from the requirements of this chapter. The way this ordinance is written, the city does not have to follow state or federal law. We have seen this in the recent example of an emotional support animal euthanized by the city of Killeen. The dog belonged to a homeless Marine veteran and was also registered to a Killeen police officer. For anyone who wants to demand that the city of Killeen follow state and federal laws, please go to change.org, Justice for EMBA. Change.org, Justice for EMBA. Thank you.
Ms. Uncle, would you say that website one more time? I didn't get that.
Change.org /Justice for EMBA.
All right.
EMBA. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Mike Fornino. Good evening, sir. You have 4 minutes.
Good evening, Michael Fornino, Killeen resident. Nothing too deep this evening, but second item on the consent agenda, consider memorandum resolution ratifying agreement with Charles Winoobst for legal services. We told you so. When it comes to this item and what it's for, we consistently warned you about what was going to happen with the Prop A, and what is specifically noticeable is the absence of all of the folks who supported Prop A. I don't see them up here kicking in. So for something that we were pretty divided on as a city, I don't see Ms. Julie Oliver here, who pretty much helped shove and push us into this mess, and now it's going to cost us even more money. So there's that. For discuss commercial truck parking, I would say, I would offer any opinions as I maintain a Class A license for 5 years when I got out of the military. I did 5 years professionally over the road. I've got just under or just over 500,000 miles under me, and I've seen most of the lower 48. And I would have some constructive criticism for anybody, on suggestions one way or the other. I mean, as to what would work for the driver and what would work for the city. I mean, I think I could offer a detached, dispassionate view, as I'm not currently in the industry, but I know that we've had citizens come before the council before who did have legitimate concerns, but they also had some pretty outlandish suggestions as to what their solutions could be. I mean, maybe we have a sit down, or if somebody gets with me. I mean, I don't know what the current plan is off the top of my head. I haven't seen anything in a while, but if we could come up with something, I would offer my assistance on that. With regard to the review of governing standards and expectations, I would second Ms. Del Conte and say that it's time that we revisit the issue of having standard of ethics, code of ethics, but with heavy input from us, the citizens, because I don't mean to rub salt in an open wound, but recent standards and recent conduct by former council member, specifically toward against me, where a strongly worded letter was the best punishment they could come up with. That just doesn't seem to fly with me. And for Ms. Del Conte, with any discrepancies for the text messages or whatever the information that she provided you, I would suggest maybe after the meeting, during a break or something, maybe just take a look at her phone and look at it in total. I'm sure that she would be more than willing to share that. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Fornino. Council, do you have anything, questions, anything? All right. Discuss items for regular city council meeting on June 27, 2023. The consent agenda. Council, you have 5 minutes, 2 time each to speak. Madam Secretary.
MN 23014, consider minutes of regular city council meeting of May 23, 2023. RS 23094, consider a memorandum resolution ratifying an agreement with Shields Winnebst for legal services. RS 23095, consider a memorandum resolution authorizing the renewal of Cisco Unified Communications Manager and Flex Support Plan in an amount of $116,640. RS 23096, consider a memorandum resolution authorizing the renewal of a Cisco Security Enterprise Agreement in an amount not to exceed $176,527.88. RS 23097, consider a memorandum resolution awarding bid number 2330 for the hangar door replacement project to NNAC Inc. in an amount of $110,340.34. RS 23098, consider a memorandum resolution awarding bid number 2332 for the terminal HVAC improvements Phase 2 vestibule door upgrades at Killeen Fort Hood Regional Airport to Valcorp Enterprises LLC in the amount of $299,832. RS 23099, consider a memorandum resolution authorizing the replacement and installation of ductwork at Fire Station 1 and Fire Station 8 by the Brandt Companies LLC in the amount of $81,260. RS 23100, consider a memorandum resolution awarding bid number 2321 East Tremere Road Bridge Repair to JHL Construction in the amount of $387,882.50. RS 23101, consider a memorandum resolution to amend the Heart of Texas Landscape and Irrigation Agreement by adding 9 fire stations to the current landscape contract and renewing the agreement for an additional year in an amount of $286,138.34 for FY23.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Do any council member have questions? Thank you.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Will you push your button again so I can see if it works? Okay. Councilmember Solomon. Which item number?
Item number 2. Item number 2.
Okay, that would be Mr. Resto? No. Is he, oh, I'm sorry. City Attorney. Yes, sir. What is your question?
Well, not so much a question as it is, well, it's a question. In the presentation, now, will there be a presentation on this or just what we have?
If you, sir, if you request it, it will be. Would
Yes.
you like one?
Yes, please.
Okay. City Attorney Clements, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, thank you. All right, so this is the item for the legal services agreement with Shields Winnebst. All right, a little bit of background. In November 2022, a majority of electors voted to pass the city's marijuana enforcement ordinance. And then in December 2022, Bell County authorized its attorneys to file suit against the city of Killeen related to this ordinance. In February 8th, 2023, the city engaged Shields Winnips to provide legal services with regard to potential litigation regarding the marijuana enforcement ordinance. And then on April 11th, Bell County did file the lawsuit against the city for declaratory and injunctive relief to invalidate the marijuana ordinance that was passed by a majority of voters in the November 2022 election. To continue to defend this lawsuit, legal expenses will exceed $50,000. And so the alternatives are not to ratify the Shields Winnips agreement for legal services related to the marijuana lawsuit, or to ratify the Shields Winnips agreement for legal services related to the marijuana lawsuit. To continue to defend the lawsuit, it would be required to ratify the agreement.
Thank you. Councilmember Solomon.
Thank you. I'll get used to this. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted, because I think the citizens wanted, from what I heard from the comments, they did not know, but it's in the presentation. I'm concerned. It says to continue to defend the lawsuit, legal expenses will exceed $50,000. And my question is, of course, we've got ourselves into this when we didn't have to. I said this before, and I'll say it again. But my question would be, we don't know, for the sake of the citizens, we don't know how much, when it says exceed 50,000, we don't know the exact amount where it would fall at. Is that correct?
That's correct. We do not know. It is very difficult to estimate exact amounts of legal expenses, and legal expenses are generally highly tied to the decisions you make and your strategy that you have in the lawsuit itself. And so those things are generally not public discussions about those decisions about what are going to be made legally that are related to legal strategy.
Of course. Thank you. I was just concerned about that because, you know, we've already there, and of course we know a lot of citizens says, hey, we should have not even gotten to this point, but we're in it now, and I just wish that we could have looked at other ways. I just want to make that comment. We looked at other ways we could to save our city money in this, and that's my concern. Madam Mayor.
Yes, sir. And yes, sir, I do understand your concern. And next week, we will vote on this, and
Yes.
you can vote it up or down.
Correct.
So do you have any more questions
No,
of
I
this?
don't. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Cagle?
So this will not be on the consent agenda at the council meeting. We'll just have it on the regular agenda, so it can be voted on separately.
Okay. So
Madam Mayor,
what-
having said that, could we vote on that separately?
Yes, sir. So what will happen when we get ready to do the agenda?
Good.
We will take it off the consent agenda because of your concern, and we respect that, and we will have it to vote on separate.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Any
Mayor.
more questions or concerns? Councilmember Sagara.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And before I request, I'm going to request an item that be presented, but, you know, I kind of concur with some of the citizens, and I understand, because a lot of these things that we do have on consent agenda, I think that even though we know that they're going to be paid for and they're budgeted, I think sometimes it's good for citizens to hear. And an example is, you know, we got good stuff going on, you know, the grant for the airport. I like to pull that one off because I think that's something that everybody should hear, you know, a lot of money that comes into the city. The reason that this council, because this happened, you know.
Mr. Wilson.
What's that?
Mr. Wilson, you want to hear his?
Yeah, Mr. Wilson, yeah. And the reason is because so many other items there, we got 21 items. And, you know, the council felt at that time that these other items needed further discussion. But I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that, because I know a lot of times we do have a lot on the consent agenda that we approved, but we just have to figure out a balance, and I'm sure that when we get into go on our governing standards, we'll do that, so.
Just for clarification, you want to talk about the grant acceptance?
Yes, the grant and what you're going to do, I think is there 2 items? Or
Yeah,
is it
that's
just-
not on consent.
Yeah, it's not on consent.
Oh, I got it, I'm sorry. All right, well, I'm just looking, I'm there busy counting all these little items. Man, we got a lot of items here.
I'm going to present,
Well,
I'm going
he's-
to present this one.
Yeah,
All right.
he's going to be up there anyway because he's next.
All right, well, I appreciate that. And I'm good. I just want to make sure that, there's items on the consent agenda at times that I think, people should hear whether they're good or bad, so.
Yes, sir, and that's something that the council can discuss when we get into our governing standards and expectation. If you want to get rid of the consent agenda items or not. So we're going to continue with the meeting. So resolutions, the same applies that each council member have 2 times to speak for 5 minutes. Madam Secretary.
RS 23102, consider a memorandum resolution accepting a Federal Aviation Administration Airport Terminal Program grant for the solar project at Killeen Fort Hood Regional Airport.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This is a grant from the FAA to acceptance of a grant for the solar project at Killeen Fort Hood Regional Airport. Just a little bit of background. The Department of Transportation through the FAA announced an opportunity for airports to apply for approximately $968 million in FY23 discretionary funds for our airport terminal program, which is one of the programs created under the bipartisan infrastructure law. The purpose of the ATP is to make annual grants for 5 years available to eligible airports for airport terminal development projects that address the aging infrastructure of the nation's airports that focus primarily on sustainability and energy efficiency. This is a competitive grant that we competed for against a large number of airports across the country. There were only 104 projects selected at 99 airports. The City of Killeen was selected to receive FAA ATP Grant in the amount of $5 million. We'll be combining that with funding from the Aviation Department's Customer Facility Charge Fund for a total of $7.1 million for the purchase and installation of solar panels and an LED retrofit of the Killeen Fort Hood Regional Airport. There is no impact to the airport operation fund or airport balance. This project includes retrofitting the entire airport campus with energy-efficient LED lighting as well as solar integrated covered parking in our car rental parking area and a portion of our short-term lot. A covered canopy will also, from the terminal to the car rental, will also be added. These are your alternatives. And our recommendation is that the council accept the FAA Airport Terminal Grant in the amount of $5 million and recommends that the city council authorize the city manager or his designee to execute all contract documents and any and all change orders or actions within amounts set by state and local law. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson, you and your staff for everything you do, especially getting grants to support the airport in your working relationship or partnership with Fort Cavazos. Thank you for all you do. And I do not have any questions for you. Thank you. Madam Secretary.
RS 23103, consider a memorandum resolution approving the investment reports for the quarter ended March 31, 2023.
Thank you. Ms. Tangling.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. According to the Public Funds Investment Act, we shall present an investment report quarterly. The city has a current agreement with Meter to provide investment services. Mr. Scott Grover is here to present the second quarterly investment report for fiscal year 2023.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, Mr. Grover.
Good evening. Hard to believe it's already been a quarter.
Yes, sir.
Well, try to keep it brief for you. Some key highlights over the quarter. Just briefed the Finance Committee on this, but pretty volatile quarter. We had some key situations evolving in the banking sector, the debt ceiling, which is now behind us, but was certainly a big topic. And then now, what is going on with the Fed after they did their first pause at this last meeting? They did not hike interest rates, which is the first time in over 18 months. So definitely a lot of things evolving in the marketplace, and it is impacting interest rates. So the first screen you see here is how have interest rates evolved over the last quarter. The blue line or teal line being at the end of March, the orange line is October of last year. The significance of those is really where we would say the topping out occurred on the longer term interest rate environment. The shorter end you can see is still very elevated from what the Federal Reserve has been doing. So that's why it's very important for us to get a good outlook or get a gauge on where the Fed is heading. And now that they've paused, it's signaling that they are near the top. We spoke about this last quarter, but as the Fed starts to top out and stop hiking interest rates and potentially start to reverse course, means that we need to be trying to lock in interest rates and preserve them in the city's portfolio so that we can hold on to longer term or higher rates for longer. And we've been doing that. So you see how that line has dropped over this last 6 months. We've been able to capture interest rates prior to that dropping. And we still feel confident in our decision to be pushing funds out longer so that the city can generate more income for a longer period of time. The shorter we are, the more sensitive we are going to be to those movements from the Fed. Case in point here. So looking at longer term certainty for the city's funds, this is basically overnight rates, cash rates, and what they've done since 2005. Obviously, there's been some big events that have occurred since this time period, the 2008 financial crisis, COVID. I'm not predicting any crashes anytime soon, certainly, but the thing is that we want to be prepared, we want to be diversified, and we want to make sure the city is not subject to losing interest income quickly. So by pushing stuff out for 1, 3, 5 years, we can guarantee income for a longer period of time and not make any big bets, right? That's the key. So just looking at the quarter over quarter comparison, the weighted average yield does continue to rise. We have lower yields in the portfolio that are maturing, and we reinvest them at higher interest rates. Cash rates have been rising as well. And you can see that the book value for the city's funds is a little bit higher over this quarter. That is to be expected. And as we progress into the remainder of the fiscal year, we would expect that to kind of be the peak on the balances for the year, and the city start to be spending down a little bit as they get into their low points. And then this last slide here really just points out the whole characteristics of the portfolio and how we're positioned. Our point of view, the city is very well positioned as far as how much is in overnight funds versus how much is in invested. This is important because the city does have debt payments and obligations they need to meet, and therefore we want to make sure you have plenty of funds that are liquid, that you can meet your debt payments and expenditures, and then also we're trying to get more pushed out into that 2 to 5 year area. We've done a lot this quarter that we're in right now, so when we present the 630 report, you'll see, and you should expect to see, more funds being pushed out into that 2 to 5 year area. Any questions for me?
No, sir, and thank you so much for that thorough update. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Madam Secretary.
RS 23104, consider a memorandum resolution renewing group employee medical and pharmaceutical benefits with United Healthcare and employee dental insurance with MetLife effective October 1, 2023.
Thank you. Mrs. Barr, good evening.
Good evening. How is everyone?
Great.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and City Manager. The item before you is the healthcare and dental renewal for FY24. Just give you a little bit quick background. Historically, the city has contributed a portion of the medical and dental premiums for employees that choose to elect our benefits. Our current providers for these coverages are United Healthcare for healthcare and MetLife for dental. We currently have approximately 944 employees that participate in our healthcare plan and approximately 1,100 employees who participate in our dental plans. Due to the anticipated increased cost in claims performance, the city requested renewals from United Healthcare in order to determine if renewing with United Healthcare would be more advantageous than going out for a bid. So in partnership with our city employees benefits consultant, Lockton Dunning, A benchmark study was completed to determine how the changes in our benefit plan and contributions would impact both the city and the employees. So let me talk to you a little bit about funding. If you recall, a couple years ago, we changed our healthcare plan into self-funding, and which means that the employer, which is the city, assumes the financial risk for providing healthcare benefits to its employees. So we pay all the claims. And so our full self-funding insurance for last year, we anticipated, or it was a cost emerging of $6.7 million. We're anticipating the cost to go up to $7.2 million this year. It's about a 6.7 increase for FY24. For our dental plan, we are still fully insured, which basically means that we pay the premiums for that cost for our employees, and it's going to go up 5%. So for the dental insurance, the cost is going to be about $630,000. The city's portion is going to be $305,584, which is about it also includes that increase of 5%. And I'll explain a little bit to you how that's going to affect the employees. Okay, so here we are here we're going to talk to you about the plans that we offer our employees. We have two main plans. We have a high deductible health care plan, and it's also attached with a health savings account. And in that plan, the only update that we have to do is, because it's mandated by IRS, our deductible is going to increase from $2,800 to $3,000 for the individual, and it will increase from $5,600 to $6,000 for the family. The city contributes a certain amount of money to our employees for the health savings account, and this year the city is going to increase that by $10.71, and I'll show you on a separate slide the impact that that's going to have on the employees that use that plan. The great benefit of having an HSA plan, it's a savings account, but the great benefit of it is if the employee does depart from the city or if they retire, that amount that is within that plan, within that account, they get to take that with them. Plan 2, we call it the copay plan. And what we're doing on this plan is that the city will be contributing, I'm sorry, I'm not speaking well. We're going to increase the employee premium by $5 per month. And again, I'll have another slide in just a minute to show you what that impact is. On our dental plans, our increase is going to be 5%, but it's going to be all city cost expense. The employees will not be seeing that increase at all. I want to take before I start on this, I want to take a couple minutes just to kind of explain something that we're about to do with our employees. You know, the healthcare can be very overwhelming, very complicated, and we want to help our employees to be the best consumers for their healthcare. So this year we are going to offer the employees an animated computer software called Alex. And Alex it's a decision tool that will support the acts as information. It's a virtual benefits counselor that will help the employees learn more about their benefits and personalize what they can do in order to be better consumers, if they should stay on Plan 1, should they go to Plan 2. Some of the things that they'll be able to do is they'll input, okay, I think, I've been prologuing this knee surgery, but I think in October, November, I'm going to have knee surgery, so they input that information in there, they input what medications they're taking, and automatically this counselor will kind of show them the costs between both plans and which one is more, in the long run, which one will be the most economical for them. So it's pretty neat. I'm really excited about that. Okay, this is the slide that I wanted to show you about the increase. And then I don't know how do I do my little, like this? If I do this? Yep, okay. So if you notice that this side right here is what the employee will be, what the employee's cost is, what will it be for 24? And if you notice that the increase on Plan 1 is 0. So anybody that stays on that plan, they're not going to see any increase. Now, currently, the HSA account, the city offers $112.75 per month. And then for FY24, we're going to increase it by $10.71. So every month, that employee will get $123 in addition on their HSA. And then if the employee wants to also put money into that, they can do that too. It's a pre-tax benefit. On Plan 2, right now, the employees do pay the premium of $30, and all the way down you'll see, now there is an error, I want to point it out on this right here, and I apologize for that. That really should say $7 I should say 773 and not 793. It's a $5 increase. So the employees will see, when depending on which, if it's employee only or spouse or children or family, they will see an increase of $5 on their health plan. And on dental, and I don't know how to read, so there we go. No? How do you clear it? There we go. All right, and on the dental plan, like I said earlier, it's going to go up 5%, but the city is going to take the expense. So if you see for the employees on both plans, they won't be increased at all, and then the city is taking the expense instead. So staff recommends that the City Council approve an anticipated increased healthcare costs of $451,983 for FY24, with the total cost approximately $7.2 million, an increase in the contribution of 5% to the dental plan, but no cost to the employees, and authorize the city manager or designee to execute an agreement with United Healthcare and MetLife effective October 1, 2023, and that the city manager or designee is further authorized to execute any necessary changes in accordance to state and local law. Address any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Mrs. Barr, especially you and your staff for the animated tool program, so that, because insurance for anyone can be very difficult.
Yes.
And your staff have gone beyond to ensure that our employees, once they make a decision, they understand that decision. And
Yes,
for
ma'am.
that, I truly thank you
You're
and your
welcome.
staff for that. Any questions? Councilmember
She's the one
Sagara.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is, I know that you mentioned that the estimated cost for 2024 is $7,219,143, and that's our self-funded, and our self-funded we did, what was it? Was it last year, 2 years ago?
We did a full year last year, yes, sir.
For last year. So my question is, how does that compare to our previous plans before we became self-funded? Because I know that the goal of being self-funded was to try to save money, and I know insurance costs go up every year, but do we know how that $7,200,000 would compare if we had not done the self-funded? Are we still, because it looks like we're pretty much the same.
Yeah, actually, and I'll let the city manager maybe elaborate a little bit more on how the cost is, but it is going up, but it didn't go up a whole bunch, but the way we also budget, it was in our favor how we budgeted. So we didn't actually, we didn't actually go, explain, Mr. Cagle will explain that.
Sure, I'm happy to. No, so the increase there, the going up to $7,219,000, that's about a 6% increase. That's pretty far below industry averages. If we were fully insured, the insurance company's going to have to make a profit on that amount. So you can be sure we would have probably been at double-digit increases instead of 6%. The only way you can get to exactly what you would want to do is to bid out fully insured, and unless the industry thought we were very serious about going back, they're not going to bid, because bidding on a health insurance plan is very time-consuming and work-intensive. But we know what we can go out in the market and look at what industry averages are, and we believe we're below that. And you can look back in time when we were having to pass on large increases to our employees, and in this instance, they're very minimal or non-existent. And so I think that's about the best case I can make for it.
Yeah, and I understand, it's hard to compare, but I just wanted to see if there was something there that indicates that, yeah, we are saving, we did the right choice. I mean, I believe what we're doing was the right thing, but I just want to make sure, if there was some kind of indicators that say, you know what, we're saving quite a bit, because I know even when we had those regular plans, typically the increase was about 6% or so a year. And so, are we pretty much the same or not? So, but thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilmember Sagara. And also, it takes out the middleman, a person that we would have to pay. And I think it's the best way to go right now with the employees. Councilwoman Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam. And Mr. Cagle might have touched on this. My question was in general on the 6.7 increase. Is that because of the industry's increase, or it's not obviously due to our number of employees that's increasing that rate? So is that industry?
It is an increase increase due to the behavior of our employees. So we pay claims, so depending on how high our claims are, well, that's what kind of dictates what your increase will be for next year. So we're predicting, based if our employees are going to act the same this year as they did last year, we're predicting about a 6% increase.
Thank you.
Well, it's a little more than that, but the cost of insurance is almost totally on claims. But it's not just the illnesses or behaviors of our employees, it's also the inflation in medical cost. So going for a doctor's visit a year ago is going to cost more next year. You can count on it. So I would say medical inflation has more to do with it than anything.
And we still have our prevention program, also the screening. And that's something I want to bring up about healthcare. One of the concerns that I had was that cancer screening. And with research, it's a fact that our first responders, our firefighters, are at a higher risk because of the environment, the smokes, the toxins that they go into. And I know we bought them new equipment, but at the same token, they are at a higher risk. Do we have anything in the healthcare insurance that they can have a pre-screening for cancer?
Not technically in ours. I think that is an actual cost, and I'm not sure, and I don't want to speak without knowing, but I think that was a decision packet that they brought forward. Am I correct, Mr. Cagle?
Yes, we have an annual basic physical is free under this health insurance.
Yes.
But what you're asking for is more advanced, and yes, it is one of the expanded packages, and it would be the next one up. The first one that was requested was the paramedic pay, and then that's the next one up in the fire department.
Thank you, Mr. Cagle. Now, that's still my question. You can't put a price on someone's life because they're at higher risk of getting cancer. Can we, and I know we may not be able to do it tonight, but how much would it cost? That's something that, yes, Mr. Cagle.
No, we'll have that in the budget presentation for you. You'll get a list of all the additional packages in the budget, and that'll be one of them. And
Yes,
it
sir.
will have dollars attached to it.
Okay. And I do know it's an amount, but I want the council to really think about that. They're out there protecting and serving and protecting everyone else's life, but they are at the higher risk at getting cancer due to their job. So that's important to me.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Secretary.
RS 23105, consider a memorandum resolution appointing council members to audit committee.
Good evening, Mr. Grady.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, City Manager, City Attorney, Deputy City Secretary. Just real quick, the purpose of this resolution is to request that City Council fill the seats on the Audit Committee previously held by Councilman Adams and Mayor Pro Tem Wilkerson. The reason I'm asking is that I've got some things in the pipeline that I want to get to the Audit Committee, so it would be great to get staffed up. And so that's basically it.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Is there any two council members who would like to serve on that? Just raise your hand. Mr. Alvarez and Mr. Boyd. Okay, that's simple.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Public hearing will be held on June 27, 2022. Council, as before, you get to speak 2 times each for 5 minutes. Madam Secretary.
PH 23038, hold a public hearing and consider an ordinance amending the FY 2023 annual budget of the City of Killeen to increase revenue and expense accounts in multiple funds.
Thank you, ma'am. Mrs. Drake, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a budget amendment on legal services. to appropriate $50,000 for additional funding for legal expenses for the marijuana enforcement ordinance. And to appropriate the $5 million grant that Mr. Wilson briefed you on earlier, along with the $2.1 million grant match from the Customer Facility Charge Fund. And then appropriate a change for the MAP grant for the corporate hangar project, $39,807. And then appropriate the HVAC project change of $89,832. It's the FAA grant amendment. And then these are the actual transactions for the revenue and then the expenses. And then our recommendation is to amend the FY23 annual budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, ma'am. There are no questions for you. Madam Secretary.
PH 23039, hold a public hearing and consider an ordinance authorizing the 2023-2024 Annual Action Plan describing use of funds and authorizing application for an allocation of Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, and Home Investment Partnerships, HOME, program funds, first of two public hearings.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Ms. Smith, how are you doing, ma'am?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council, and City Manager. The item before you is the FY24 CDBG home and grant requests, and again, the first public hearings. Annually, the city receives funding from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development from 2 of 4 formula grant programs: Community Development, also known as CDBG, and Home Investment Partnerships Act, also known as HOME. The city must seek input from the community, hold public hearings, and submit an action plan to HUD for approval. Community Development Division conducts community planning meetings to gather citizen input on community needs. Those input meetings were held on January 25th and February 9th. The results are posted on the city's website, and those results guides the Community Development Advisory Committee's recommendations for proposed activities for the coming year. CDBG activities must meet one of 3 national objectives: benefit low-income persons, eliminate slum and blight, or respond to natural disasters. Home is simple. Home activities must address housing to include development and redevelopment of affordable units. We must hold public hearings, which will be scheduled on June 27th and July 25th. We also must accept citizen comments for 30 days, and those comments must be applicable to the proposed use of the CDBG and home funding. The entitlement amounts for the from HUD for the CDBG and home programs for program year 23 and fiscal year 24 are as follows. The CDAC committee met on May 10th and 11th to review applications for funding. Applications responses scored on 4 dimensions or criteria: significance, impact and delivery, feasibility and compliance, and leveraging. We'll now cover the CDBG funding categories, beginning with public services, which is limited to just 15% of the annual grant from HUD. The administration is limited to 20% of the annual grant, leaving 65% of the grant for other eligible categories such as housing, public facilities and improvements, code enforcement, and others. At this time, I would like to turn over the presentation to Mr. Johnny Frederick. He is the president of the CDAC committee.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, City Council, Mr. City Manager, Mr. City Attorney. There we go. I'm going to give you our, after deliberations and listening to the different people that wanted to get grants from the city for CDBG funds, we listened to their presentations, and then as Ms. Smith said, we scored them on a score sheet and discussed them, and these are the ones that we feel like we want to recommend for funding to you for CDBG grant funds. For the Hill Country Community Action Association, $4,187 for the Senior Meals Program. For the City of Killeen Community Development, $94,134 for the Killeen Reunification Program, which is direct assistance to beneficiaries, payment of salary, fringe benefits, and licensed master social worker. To the Killeen Police Department, $5,000 for their community engagement program. To Killeen Communities in the Schools of Greater Central Texas, a $19,000 grant to continue their Connections program. I believe it's at the Dowse Elementary School. Bring everyone into the zone, ask for money for a retail resource manager, partial salary, and we're recommending you fund them for $5,000. The Greater Killeen Community Clinic asked for $25,000 for office manager salary assistance. We recommend you fund that in the amount of $10,000. For Killeen Creators, they asked for $20,000. We did give them a grant last year, and they're still working on spending it this year, so we're recommending that you don't fund them again this year. The City of Killeen Elderly Transportation Program, which is a program that is funded or is actually administered within the CDBG office that provides transportation to elderly in the city. We're recommending you fund that in the amount of $50,984.65. The total amount requested from the grants recipients was $391,314.30, and our limit was $188,269.65, and that's the amount we're recommending that you fund.
Thank you so much. Thank you and the team for working on this, and I thank you for that. But I have one question in reference to the elderly transportation. They requested $65,000, but they wasn't granted the whole amount. Is there a reason?
There wasn't enough money to go around. We tried to fund a lot of different programs that we've helped out in the past, and as you notice, most all of the funding was restricted this year, not because we didn't have as much money as we had last year, but the need was greater, and we had more people asking for funds.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Thank you, sir.
I had a couple more items I need to bring up. First one is a Community Development Block Grant. We had a forward commitment from last year of $58,465 for a forward commitment to the Code Enforcement Program. Last year, they asked for a 3-year amount, and we weren't able to give them the whole amount in 1 year, so we forward committed for 2 years the amount that would break it down to where they could get that code enforcement officer. And on housing and public facilities and improvements, City of Killeen building inspections had asked for $88,000. We're recommending that you fund that through the budget this year. And City of Killeen Community Development, Community Reunification and Connection Center Public Facilities Grant in the total amount that's left over of $757,370.15. And that's the total of the Community Development Block Grant funding, and I can address home funding if you like.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Bob.
Okay, now this is the home program fund. Fort Area Habitat for Humanity had asked for money for land acquisition. The amount they requested was $200,000. We're recommending that you fund them the amount of $456,007.68. The reason for that is because those funds need to be allocated, or home program can take them back if we don't allocate them. We didn't have anyone else ask for home program funds, so that's the reason why that they got more than what they requested. We're also asking for 10% of the annual grant for administration, which is $60,737.10. Also, we have a required setback within the home program for community development housing organizations, which we had none apply this year, but that money still needs to be set aside, and that's in the amount of $91,105.65. So the total CDAC recommendation for home is $607,850.43. And I'll be glad to answer any questions on the disbursement of funds that we're recommending.
Thank you, sir. And as we move into next year, I really want us to really take that elderly transportation, since they didn't get the full amount this year, because that is their livelihood, getting to places. So that is a concern of mine.
Yes, ma'am.
But I'm
sorry, go ahead.
I do appreciate everything that you have done, and I know there's other programs out there that we need to support also.
Yes, ma'am. I'm just going to make a statement. In the past, we have used local cab service for that elderly transportation program. The cab service that we were using has gone out of business.
Correct.
So now there's issues with getting that, trying to reestablish it. So it's actually costing us a little bit more money to make those trips for those folks. So hopefully we'll be able to get that rectified and get some more money into there. Just as a summary, the required comment period begins June 26th. It's advertised in the Clean Data Herald on the city's webpage, and it period ends on July 25th. The approval of the ordinance will come after the second public hearing and the receipt of any additional public comments. Submittal of a program year 23-24 annual action plan to HUD is due by August 17th of 2023, and HUD approval of the annual plan and release of funding after October the 1st of 2023. And if you have any questions for I or Ms. Smith, we'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you both once again for everything, but our elderly transportation, I do understand things are going up, but that should be a top priority.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary.
PH 23040, hold a public hearing and consider an ordinance requested by ILI LLC on behalf of CPB Investments, Inc., House Cross Associations Ltd., and Melva L. Van Dyke, case number 23-14, to rezone approximately 31.005 acres out of Thomas Robinette Survey, abstract number 686, and Lot 1, Block 1 of Elms Creek Addition, Phase 2, from AR-1 Agricultural Single Family Residential District, R-3A Multifamily Apartment Residential District, and B-3 Local Business District to Planned Unit Development, PUD, with SF-2 Single Family Residential District, R-3A Multifamily Apartment Residential District, and B-3 Local Business District uses. The property is generally located east of South Clear Creek Road and south of Janelle Drive, Killeen, Texas.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Good evening, Mr. Revelle.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council, and to the City Manager. This rezoning request to be heard on next week is to rezone property that's generally located east of South Clear Creek Road and south of Janelle Drive. And that rezoning is to go from agricultural single-family residential, multifamily apartment residential, and local business district to a planned unit development with single-family residential component, a multifamily apartment residential district component, and a local business use district component. The star on the map shows the approximate location of the site. It's a 31-acre site. And here this shows the entire 31 acres. And as I said, a portion would be rezoned for PUD with B3 for retail and personal services. This portion here would be rezoned for the multifamily residential, and which is about, I believe, about 20 acres. And then this portion here would be zoned for the single family residential, about 10 acres. I've got the actual acreage a little bit further into the slides. This shows the existing site in context of the surrounding zoning. As you can see, a lot of the surrounding zoning is either B3 or R1 single family residential. If approved, the applicant intends to develop a horizontal mixed-use community that has neighborhood retail, single-family rental, and multifamily uses, and the acreage The exact acreage is provided on the slide here. Local business district, about 3.5 acres. The multifamily residential, about 18, and then the single-family residential, about 10. Total about 31 acres. The maximum number of residential units will not exceed 372 units. Specifically, that breakdown would be the maximum not exceeding for the multifamily of 300 units, and those would be either one bedroom, two or three bedroom units, dwelling units, and then also the single family, a maximum of 72 units that will either be 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, or 4 bedroom homes. This map here really shows the layout. So on the front end, as we mentioned, that would be the retail services, part of the B3. Part of the overall R3 area here, all of these buildings here would also be an activity center that will accommodate those that would be residents, a part of the multifamily as well as residents that would be a part of the single-family rental property. And that really shows the layout. This map also shows that there will be several access points. So let me just clear this out. Access off of Clear Creek Road there, access off of Janelle Drive there, and then also a public access off of along Foster Lane, and then back onto Janelle Drive. I also would point out that this map, it shows a lot of green space. So a lot of the green areas is green space and courtyards. A lot of the white space, if you will, in front of the green space that's just adjacent to the roadway. So I'll try to point that out, like there. All of that is front-end parking. So there'll be a lot of front-end parking there. And along the multifamily, it's about 600 parking spaces or so, if I recall correctly. And then also in this area here, for the single family, as we said, there'll be the public roadway there, then there's private access roadways here, and then each home would have a driveway. And so basically we're looking at mostly a development that has private roads. The only public roads would really be related to Main Street here and Foster Lane. The next slides really show some representations of what this could look like. This represents the activity center. The activity center actually is a part of the PUD standards, will have a number of amenities in them. Some of those amenities include a clubhouse with a large gathering space, pool, fitness center, pet park, pet spa. There are a lot of amenities associated with the center itself, and then a lot of amenities associated with the retail space. So some is inside, some is outdoors. This shows a representation of some of the multifamily units. As you can notice here, as I said, there's front-end parking. There's plenty of landscaping. There is also the driveway apron that leads to a garage that's here and a garage that's there. Okay. Just another rendering from a different angle. And then in the single-family residential, as we said, the main roadway is actually off of the slide there, and then the loop around is here with the access off of that loop around into the single-family homes. As we said, there'll be a maximum of 72. They'll be divided out into 6 platted lots, so it'll be each one of these loops, if you will have 12 homes that are served. And plenty of landscaping and trees. Another rendering showing the homes. As we said, it could be 1 bedroom, well, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, or 4 bedroom homes. And then this shows the local retail. And as you can see, kind of coming in, got a little boulevard there, Boulevard Allen, and then angle in parking this direction, then back out the other way. And then some more renderings here. The site also is consistent with the future land use plan, regional, commercial, and residential mix. This map really shows, again, the delineation of the future land use, residential mix and regional commercial. More comp plan analysis, again, a lot of showing that this is in the direction of what the comp plan calls for. It's not included here, but also this area is located in an intended growth zone. It's also located in a neighborhood infill zone. And basically, both of those zones say these are zones where development should happen. And so we're really excited about that. We're finding that, again, that this request is consistent. The future land use map, there are a number of comprehensive plan recommendations that this request will further, and there are numbers, so I won't read them all. Properties not in the flood hazard area or National Wetlands Inventory map. This is a view of the rear of the property looking south, view of the property looking northwest. All notifications have been accomplished. We did receive one written response in opposition to the request out of the 131 notifications. This shows the notification extents. The council will have three alternatives. You can disapprove, approve with conditions, or approve as presented. And staff is recommending that this be approved as presented. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this item on May 1st and voted by a vote of 5-0 to recommend approval of the applicant's request as presented. And also, the applicant is present, and the applicant also has a short presentation.
Thank you. Council, do you want to see the short presentation before we go into our questions? All right, sir. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, Council. Thank you very much for this time. I just wanted to take a moment to introduce myself. I'm Joseph Sear. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. My address is 6642 Clayton Road, St. Louis, Missouri 63117. We've been looking in this area for quite some time, and my development company is focused on building high-quality communities and with an emphasis on permanent ownership. We are not a merchant builder. We come into a market and seek to build and hold and operate. We're quite proud of our accomplishments in just the first 6 years of operations, and we have built best-in-class products in Missouri. In fact, those properties are all in the top 1% nationally for customer satisfaction. I'm not sure how to use this. Just forward? Yeah. Okay, perfect. I was, just a little background about me in case anyone's wondering. I was born in the Midwest but educated in Dallas and been in multifamily development investment for over 17 years, and married for nearly 25 years now and have 8 children. And we have a great organization, great people working with us. 2 of our communities are in the top, again, 1% nationally according to apartmentratings.com. Here in Killeen, we took a look around and we studied the comprehensive plan and saw that the city was looking for more traditional neighborhood development that encourages walkability, has a lot of green space, and particularly here, we looked around and see that our, particularly our professional soldiers, men and women in uniform, really don't have a housing option quite like this. And we see that it could be very, very supportive to both the servicemen and women and their families, which is why we've chosen the location that we've chosen along Clear Creek and Janelle. It puts us sort of in between two entrances to the base. It puts us very close to Advent Healthcare and access to the VA hospital as well as two colleges. So there's a lot of strong demand from professional individuals in this area. We tend to target the renter by choice, and that is the renter who, for reasons of convenience and lifestyle, choose to rent as opposed to buy. We focus on a very, very high level of service. By example, in one of our communities, we have nearly a quarter of the building entering their 4th lease term with us, which means that when our residents move in, they are so well taken care of, they don't really want to leave. We studied, again, the market here, and we looked around at the employment opportunities and identified this as a premier location for this traditional neighborhood style development that we are pursuing. Just some examples of a property we built and the kind of quality that we're committed to. And again, because we are long-term owners, we spend a lot on the front end so that we can reduce our operating costs long-term. A lot of first-choice decisions dictate how well the property holds up over time and how much it costs to maintain. That's all I have. I'm here to answer any questions about the development, about my firm, anything that you might have. And thank you for listening, and thanks for the great presentation.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rebel, you and your staff have done an excellent job on this project from my perspective. When you talk about the comprehensive plan and the connectivity, the neighborhood to the resources with the retail, and also the amenities, that this is something I know this council worked very hard on the comprehensive plan to ensure that these things are in place. But I do have just one question. Cost, how much will it cost to rent an apartment? I know you have from one
Yes.
bedroom to 4.
Sure. So in the multifamily, the 2-story buildings, we have 1, 2, and 3 bedroom homes. We expect that the 1-bedroom apartments will rent in approximately the $1,200 range. The 2-bedroom apartments in the $1,600, $1,700 range. The 3-bedroom apartments will be right around $2,000. Transition over to the single-family homes, 2, 3, and 4-bedroom homes. A 2-bedroom home will rent for probably $1,850. A 3-bedroom home just over $2,000, and a 4-bedroom home probably in the $2,500, $2,600 range. For comparison, there are 2 properties different than our properties, but the Durrell on Tremere and Icon on Thayer have similar rents. They're 3-story buildings as opposed to 2-story buildings as our proposed 2-story multifamily buildings.
That's what I liked when I first met you, your competitive spirit, that you do your research.
Thank you.
I have to give you that. You do your research. All right, sir, would you please stand by, because we have other council members that would like to ask a question. And I have one more, but I'm going to let them go.
Wonderful.
Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The mayor is correct. You guys have done your research, identifying 2 gates for Fort Hood in between. There's actually a shortage of multifamily housing in West Killeen. Within the past 4 years, we've had 2 more come online. One of the villas at Robinette, at the corner of Robinette and Elms, as well as Icon, former Thayer Point, right there at Stan Sluter and Clear Creek. So there is definitely a shortage for continued multifamily. I see that you guys work with the city to negotiate a PUD, but I did have just a few questions. One's relating to traffic. Across from the entrance on Clear Creek is Bellagio Drive. Should this development go forward, that's going to become a 4-way intersection. What do you think the TIA may propose to solve traffic flow issues at that location?
I don't have the exact answer to that, Councilman Boyd, but I do know that a TIA is required When the TIA worksheet was done, I think the counts were over 3,000, it might have been 3,300 or so, compared to 2,000. So it's required. That intersection that you're talking about also is off of Clear Creek.
Right.
And so that's TxDOT, so they also will have requirements as well. So a lot of that's going to be controlled by TxDOT, but the TIA is present, and so whatever will be required in order to accommodate traffic and mitigate impacts will have to be accommodated.
Understood. And it's good to hear that this triggered the TIA. The question I have for the developer is what percentage of masonry would be applied to the multifamily and the single family? These will be constructed on Clear Creek. That's our white collar corridor, if you will. I do think we should have a higher standard of construction there. I see it appears to be 20 to 30% masonry on the images, but what is the?
Yes, so in the retail is predominantly masonry, and the retail is what will actually front Clear Creek. If we can pull up the map, there's a boulevard entrance that goes by 4 retail buildings. Those will be predominantly masonry. What percentage exactly, I can't say, but it'll be masonry and glass storefront. There may be some fiber cement components there, but the dominant.
And I'm speaking in particular to the dwellings.
Okay.
Yes,
So
sir.
the multifamily buildings will have approximately 15 to 20% masonry on the street-facing facades.
Okay. Now, the interior, not interior, but the multifamily that's within the development,
Yes. That's.
what might be the percentage there?
And that's what I'm referring to. That would be 15 to 20% masonry on the street-facing facades.
Okay, thank you for that. And how will the proposed development meet the requirements of the Parkland Dedication and Development Ordinance?
We are committed to making a contribution in kind of cash per the ordinance requirements to support the development of parkland in Killeen.
Okay, and what might that amount to based on the calculations from staff?
We will bring that number back to you, Counselor. But as he has said, there is a dedication, parkland dedication requirement, and then there's also parkland development requirement. And right now, as written in the PUD, all of that will be taken care of, paid as fees in lieu of. So we'll get that information to you. I don't want to guess that.
Sure.
I'd like to have it exactly.
Sure, and I'd like to have that information prior to the
Yes, sir.
vote. I would appreciate that. My last comment on this, I do believe this development will effectively increase the housing inventory for multifamily where we're lacking, adds needed retail space, and will provide a higher quality of living standard for those who may determine to live at this location. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Boyd. Councilmember Alvarez.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 quick questions. This is probably for staff, and you may or may not have gotten into these conversations yet since we're just talking about zoning. But has there been any conversations as to roadway widths and tree-lined streets? Have we gotten that far deep in yet?
Yes, within the plan unit development standards, and we can provide that information to you. But yes, we have details.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, sir. Councilmember Sagara.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think most of my questions were answered because I was going to ask about parks. But I just want to reemphasize what you said. You guys are buying, and it's a hold and operate operation. So none of those properties, including the houses, you're actually going to sell. You're going to operate them as a management company and do that. And I commend you for that because I think that, I've been doing real estate here for 30 years. And I've seen, when we built multifamily fourplexes, and it doesn't always turn out that good. So as much as I love property to sell, I was never in favor of individuals. And so I appreciate you coming in here and doing such a beautiful development. I think that this is great for our community. It kind of sets a direction that we as council want, and thank you for mentioning our comp plan. It just goes to show that all that work that staff did and council, does pay off because people do look at it and it pays off in the long run, and I think this is evident of it. And so I think it's a great project, and I'm just excited about it. And I think that you got a perfect location there too because of the base, Clear Creek and all that. I think that, we're such a transit area that having that there in that vicinity, I go down that gate about once a day. I go in and out that gate, and there's always traffic going in and out on Clear Creek. And so I think that you've done a benefit to our soldiers and us as a military community. Every so many years, we have what they call BRAC, and they look at all that stuff. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but it does look favorable to the Department of Defense when we have projects like that we're really taking care of our soldiers, and they have something to do so close. So thank you for that. Appreciate that. The last question is, if you continue doing that, we'd like to see more of these, maybe on our north side next time.
Absolutely. One at a time.
Thank you, Councilmember Sagara. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you. With these types of developments, and you're developing and holding, to Councilman Sagara's point, it's a good thing. It offers a lot of stability to our residents in the communities where there's a lot of shifting and a lot of not knowing what's going to happen from day to day when you're dealing with private owners. But I did have just a general question, because sometimes when you're dealing with these high-end mixed-use type facilities on the retail side, some of the block developers will come in with vendors and retailers. Is that how your structure is, or is this open to just general public?
Yes, thank you. Good question. We are going to be formally listing the retail for lease. We do have some interest. Folks have approached us who have learned about the project through public records. And so we are talking with a few people who would take maybe up to 12,000 square feet of the 22,000 square feet, but nothing is certain yet. And we're committed to neighborhood retail uses that are compatible with the housing. We have a list, if you read the PUD, we have a list of restricted uses, meaning things that will never be permitted in this retail, because again, we want it to be family focused, and we want it to add long-term value to the community.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gonzalez. Before I go to the next person, again, Councilmember Solomon, would you like to say anything? All right, sir. Yes, sir. Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just due diligence, question for our fire chief and police chief. What impact might this make on our two departments, and are we able to maintain?
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening. Sorry, I took the long route there. The impact of this housing is it's consistent with the land use map, and so our Station 4 that is being built would, without knowing what the district lines between that and Station 9 are going to be the two primary responses. Our future growth is going to be able to handle what this is going to be once Station 4 is completed.
Very good, thank you.
Good evening, Chief Lopez.
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening. Like Chief said, that anytime you have an increase in population in the city, it's going to cause an increase in cost of service. But how many units? I was outside when the
300 multi and 72 single family.
So it will see an increase in cost of service, but it's yet to determine what type of cost of service. Normally in apartment complexes or buildings areas, there be thefts, motor vehicle thefts, stuff like that. But that's something with our current staffing model currently, I think we can handle.
Okay, thank you for that information. The last question I have is for the developer. On slide 16 of your presentation, Mr. Ravel, slide 16, it shows that retail area as a rendering. And I just want to ask a question, if this rendering is likely to be what we'll see. If so, that it looks wonderful.
That is what you'll see, except with the building in the background. We had done an earlier study considering a higher density building, and so the building in the background will not be there. But this boulevard with the 45-degree angled parking and the tree line down the middle of it, that is all going to be there. And it will terminate into the amenity center, if you will, for the housing community.
Gotcha. And there'll be a mix of the 2 stories buildings going into the retail.
So different retailers require different clear heights.
That's
and
right.
so the buildings will vary in height according to the needs of the particular retailer. There won't be
Absolutely.
anything on the second floor. That merely is, it's all going to be single level retail.
Understood. And I just want to give a compliment in regards to connectivity. There's connectivity from Clear Creek, there's connectivity from Janelle, as well as Stan Schluter, and I think that's outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Revelle. I had a question, but I don't want to get too far off. This is a zoning item, but I can talk to you offline. I really, truly appreciate both of you, and Mr. Revelle, you can have the last word.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to mention a couple of things. We will pass along the PUD standards, and so that will speak specifically to a lot of questions that's been asked about uses and things of that nature. And then also, I wanted to reference, too, that we did have a fiscal impact analysis performed for this project to see what fiscal impact it would have. If you use the comp plan as a reference, it talked about that in order to break even for a development, that cost is about, it should generate like $33.50 per acre in order to break even for a development. Well, this development, according to our numbers, would generate $64.33, which is about twice that number. So that gives you an idea of that fiscal impact, and that gives you an idea of impact on services as well.
Yes, sir. And as you stated earlier, it's an expected growth. This right here will set the standards to what is to come in that area and throughout City of Killeen. Thank you. Items for discussion. Council, you can speak 2 times each for 5 minutes. Madam Secretary.
DS 23064, Municipal Court Briefing.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Judge Christner. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, city manager. This is the first briefing for the Killeen Municipal Court, and I'm happy to be here to give you this briefing. And the first thing I'd like to talk about is the 4 main topics I'll cover this evening. I'll talk about some municipal court challenges, the number of defendants that come to the court, the funds collected by the court, and I'll also go over the National Center for State Court metrics. Now, first, I'll cover the court challenges as of this month. The biggest issue we faced in the court, really for the last year, has been staff turnover. And the staff turnover has been higher than it should be. There's been continuous staffing shortages over the last year. That's caused the staff that's there to do additional duties over extended periods of time. That's been very stressful for the staff that's there. Also, we begin new employees, and we've having to focus on training the new employees constantly. And that's also put a stress on the staff as well. Now, the worst part about this is we have major projects that we're trying to do, is put a lot of those major projects on hold. The most important one are the technology upgrades that are pending. So we're trying to increase the efficiency of the court by improving the technology. And these are the things that we're trying to implement, and it's going to take some time because of the more duties the staff's doing right now. They're not able to focus on these pending technology upgrades. The first being the installation of new credit card machines. Next is implementing a pay-by-phone system. And we also want to implement a court public access for online records and dockets. Next, we want to install a defense attorney access. That'll be an online access. And this will help to fully utilize more online options for the public and for defense attorneys to make things more efficient for everyone. Hopefully, when we are able to relieve the staffing shortages and the turnover, that we'll be able to implement these upgrades as soon as possible. Now, next, I'd like to talk about the number of defendants that came to the court in May. Now, at first, we have the defendants come to the court lobby. They're seen by the court clerks. Now, in the month of May, we had 1,564 defendants served by the clerks in the lobby. We also had 669 defendants appear in court for dockets. That's for the whole month of May. Now, next we'll talk about the funds collected by the court. Now, the funds collected by the court are split up between court fines, fees, and court costs. Now, the metric I'm going to present will show how much money was retained by the city and how much money was remitted to the state. And it also determined the total amount collected by the court. In April, the city collected $217.30. Now, we had to remit $97,477 to the state. The total amount collected was $314,507. In May, we increased it to $249,389 and remitted $108,191 to the state, and in total we collected $357,580. Then next, the last thing I want to talk about is the National Center for State Courts Court Tool metrics. These are the metrics we use to do how we conduct all our dockets, all our numbers by the state level averages. Now I'll explain each one. The first one is the clearance rate. And the first thing that the clearance rate does is the number of outgoing cases as a percentage of the number of incoming cases. Now, this clearance rate measures whether the court is keeping up with its incoming caseload. Now, for April, the actual number in our clearance rate was 124,030. Now, that's above the national time standards of 100% or higher. And then in May, it was a little lower. It was 99.59%, which was under the 100%, but not by much. Next, we have time to disposition. Now, that's the percentage of cases disposed or otherwise resolved within established time frames. Now, this measure, used along with the clearance rate and age of pending caseload, this is an essential management tool that assesses the length of time it takes a court to process cases. Now, in April, the numbers were really low. April and May, the numbers were really low. And as you see in the comments, the reasons why the numbers are low are directly related to the warrants. Now, between the years of 2018 and 2022, the court was not focusing on conducting warrants, activating them, and going through with the warrants. And that left those cases active. If the warrants would have actually been issued, those cases would have turned to inactive cases, and the numbers would have been more in line with where they're supposed to be. But now we're trying to activate the warrants now to get more in line with the numbers the way they're supposed to be. So that's why the numbers are low now. They'll probably be low for a while until we can catch up with the warrants that were not done for the previous 4 years. Next is the age of pending caseload. Now, the age of the active cases that are pending before the court. Now, this is measured as the number of days from filing until the time of measurement. Now, these cases that are filed but not yet disposed are what makes up the court's pending caseloads. Those are active cases. Now, in April, between 1 and 60 days, we had 3.12% of pending cases. Now, between 61 and 90 days, it was 2.06%, and so on and so forth. Now, these numbers are very low, in my opinion, because of the backlog of cases that are still significant. Once again, this is tied to the warrant status. Now, as I said, we're trying to address this, but it's going to take some time to get to that, to fix these. Now, lastly, we have the time date certainty. Now, this is the number of times cases are disposed of by trial, by trial and our schedule for trial. So this metric provides a tool for management to evaluate the effectiveness of calendaring and continuance of cases. Now, the Kalihi Municipal Court does not hold many trials. In April, we've only had one jury trial, and in May we had 0. So obviously, the numbers are very low because we don't have very many trials, which is not necessarily a bad thing. That means we're doing things more efficiently by disposing of cases without actually having to go to trial. So in summary, we covered the challenges of the court. We covered the number of defendants that came to court in April and May, the funds collected by the court, and also the tools used for the National Center for State Courts. And that's all we covered today. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Judge, for that presentation. I have several questions. I guess my main one was that's important, is the revenue that's going to state. Why?
By law, the court costs have to go to the state. The fines go to the city, and the costs go to the state.
Is there something that we can have our House of Representative to look into?
You can look into it, but nothing's going to change. The state wants their money.
Okay. My next question is concerning staff turnover. So how can we alleviate that? And what is needed to, is it pay? Is it, I know you stated that it was working because of the shortage. They have to work a little harder.
Yes.
Do you have any recommendations on how we can assist with that?
I think the biggest recommendation I can give to alleviate staff turnover is to make the working environment more pleasant for people. You know, for the supervisors to take a lead in managing the people and make sure they listen to their concerns and try to address their concerns. I think that's the biggest issue.
And you are working on that?
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. And my last question to you is, how do we activate a warrant?
Well, it's a process where we have to have the warrants activated by the staff, and I have to sign the warrants. But we also have to go out and issue the warrants, and we don't have the staff to issue the warrants. The staff required to issue the warrants are 2 marshals, and we still need to have marshals in the courthouse for security purposes. So we'll actually need a total of 4 marshals, in my opinion, to actively do the warrant situation and to maintain security in the court. We need 2 to go out and actually serve warrants daily. That way the warrants don't get caught behind and we get a backup like we've had in the past. We need the marshals to go out and serve the warrants daily. That would be the best, right, Monday through Friday. But we have to have 2 marshals for safety purposes, because when you serve warrants, you go to people's houses, and we don't want one person going to a person's house, because obviously that's a dangerous situation, because the person there may not want the police or a peace officer there serving the warrant, so it's good to have a backup there. I think safety is very important for that. But we also needed 2 people in the courthouse, because we need 1 in court and 1 to maintain the general lobby area and everything else to make sure that the courthouse is secure.
And how many employees you think you may need?
I would like 4 total. Marshals, that is. The problem is, in this day and age, getting peace officers employed is not very easy. We've had the job listings for a deputy marshal and a chief marshal, and we haven't gotten many applicants. And that's something that's going on statewide. With a lot of peace officer positions, there aren't that many applicants.
And for the daily operations, how many employees do you need? Not the marshals, but just employees that do the paperwork.
Oh, well, there's different sections for employees. So we have about 25, but there's different sections. They do different things. I think we hired a couple more people that started today. We hired a few more people that started within the last few months. So we're getting the people we need. It's just, the situation with the warrants, we need the marshals. And that might take a little while to get.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Anyone? Councilmember Segar.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think the mayor asked most of the questions that I had in mind, but just one question, because you had mentioned about the money that you guys got coming in, 200 goes to the city. I think the total was, what, 300,000? And that's a combination, you said, between fines, court costs, and what else?
And fees.
And fees. So do you have a breakdown of which one is the one that generates the most revenue for you out of those 3?
Oh, it's the fines.
The fines?
Yes.
And the fines, what does it fines incorporate? Is that like speeding tickets?
Well, anytime there's a citation, there's a fine and there's costs, and sometimes there are fees. Like, say, if the case gets old, goes to collections, collection has a fee. Yeah. If there's a hold on a license, like because it took too long, there's a hold from DPS for a person's license, that's a fee from DPS. But the costs go directly to the state, that's their money.
Yeah.
And the bulk of it is the fine. Like, say, a speeding ticket. A speeding ticket, the fine is $200, and the court costs are $134. So it's a total of $334. $200 goes to the city, $134 goes to the state for the fine. Or excuse me, for the fees.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the costs.
Okay, no, I was just trying to figure out, like, I know that the police department, I think they do it maybe once a year when they do that, what is it called, that they go out and they get funding from the state, and then they go out and give speeding tickets, you know?
Oh, yes, yes.
Oh, I forgot the name of that, what is it called? Step grants,
Yes.
excuse me. And when they get those step grants, do you see an increase in those fines that you get in, or is that separate?
Well, there's no increase in the fines. The fines are set. You know, I can decrease the fines, but there's a range for the fines. Like for most cases, the fine range, or most like traffic cases, the fine range is $1 to $200.
No, well, what I mean is like those people coming in, you know, people.
Oh, you mean an increase in cases?
Yeah, an increase.
Yes, there's definitely an increase.
Yeah, and so I just was trying to figure out how much of that contributes to the money coming into the city and all that, the fines that you give. So I don't know how that looks on that scale of your income coming in.
Well, I see what you're saying. That I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I don't know when they're doing the STEP program.
Got it. All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councilmember Sagara. Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Judge, and thank you for the presentation. I'll also request that we get that sent to council members. You mentioned that the staff cannot focus on technology upgrades due to the turnover. How important are these upgrades being implemented?
Well, I think they're very important to the public because it'll make things more efficient. And it's my goal to have this court as efficient as possible. I want to get people in and get them out as soon as possible because obviously they have to go to work, they have to go to school, and sitting there in the lobby, having to sit there all day to get or sitting in the courtroom all day to get their issues disposed of is not really the best way. So I think having these technology upgrades is very important, especially if they don't even have to come to court. If they can just do things by phone, which is very convenient, or do things online, which is very convenient, that will help people a lot, especially having to drive all the way to the courthouse, try to park, sit in the courtroom all day, sit in the lobby all day. It'll make things better for people.
Sure, so this is in relation to efficiency.
I'm sorry, say again?
This is in relation to efficiency.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. And I know that that's always been important to you, making sure the court's efficient. I'm thinking back to the interview process, that was a question, and your response was making our court efficient. So I hope that even with these budget discussions, we'll see what we can do to help alleviate some of the burden. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Cagle?
Just to reiterate what the judge said about those state costs, those are not real court costs. The state just said, you're going to pay us that. And every session, and they haven't done it in a while, but they would say, we're going to add 25 cents to a ticket to pay for this program. And that way you could add a program without taxing anybody for it. And so it went through easy. Well, over 20 or 30 years, that 25, 50 cents, then it'd go to $1, has added up to where we're sending almost half of the cost of a ticket to the state of Texas. And that's one of many, many, many reasons why we're the only state in the union, 1 out of 50, where the flow of funds is from the local government to the state government. And every other state, other 49, the flow's the other way. They send money to us. And the state of Texas does this this is just one, but it's a big one, but many other ways where the public doesn't see the flow of funds. Thank you. Thanks, Judge.
Thank you, City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Cagle. Thank you, Judge Krishner.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Oh, yes, we do have one more. Councilwoman Gonzalez.
Thank you, ma'am. So, Judge Krishna, the impact that you said about the marshals and peace officers, nationwide, of course, in Texas across the board, is extremely difficult to find those employees. Are there any tools, or collectively, what are they saying as far as opportunities to be able to increase opportunities for staffing of recruiting the police officers and peace officers? I mean, it seems like it's very daunting, right? I don't see any solution in sight. Are you hearing anything in your world, basically?
I'm not hearing anything because I know there are a lot of jurisdictions out there that are looking for people, and they're just not getting them.
Yeah.
Some places are having to increase the sign-in bonuses or the salaries just to get people. And obviously they can do that, and we really can't, not to that level.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes, sir. We'll take a 10-minute break.
Thank you, everyone.
You too, sir. Secretary.
DS 23065, discuss commercial truck parking.
Mr. Rivera, welcome back, sir.
So a little background, on April 5th of last year, the council had made a motion of direction for staff to work with KDC on a plan to resolve the lack of commercial truck parking. And then more recently, last month, the council made an additional motion of direction for staff to follow up on the discussion from April 2022 and discuss truck parking and possible solutions. It is worth noting that the City Council adopted the ordinance number 18049 that made it unlawful for a person to park any vehicle having a capacity of 1 ton, including but not limiting to truck trailers on a street within 600 feet of a property zone or used for residential purposes. Basically, in essence, that really limited the number of places on public streets that a truck, tractor, or semi-truck could legally park. Currently, there is at least one commercial truck parking business in Killeen. The address is noted 3404 East Veterans Memorial Boulevard. And then as it relates to other available commercial truck parking locations also listed on the slide, Carver's Cove, Harker Heights, and Salado. It is worth noting that commercial truck parking is a permitted use in specific zoning districts, and those are noted here. The high intense commercial districts, B4 and B5, and then the industrial districts of M1 and M2. What we did is we looked at properties located within those districts where commercial truck parking could be allowed, and we discovered there are about 1,000 acres of property that's zoned for commercial truck parking throughout the city and currently undeveloped. We also noticed that across those 1,000 acres, there represents about 71 locations across the city. So if one was questioned about the opportunity to be able to do commercial truck parking, it seems like it's available. A private developer could legally establish a commercial truck parking business on any of these locations. As I mentioned, it's like 71, as long as they meet applicable code requirements. And those code requirements specifically, the predominant requirements is that the property must be paved with an all-weather surface, asphalt or concrete, and that the property must provide the necessary detention for stormwater runoff. That's a city requirement, but it's a federal mandate. So what are the alternatives associated with dealing with commercial truck parking? We could do nothing and allow the private market to address the need for commercial parking, given 1,000+ acres and 71 locations. Or we can partner with the developer and provide financial incentives to facilitate development of commercial truck parking. We could change the all-weather surface requirement for commercial truck parking. Or we could allow use of a city street or city parking lots for commercial truck parking, or we could amend the section associated with the semi-trucks and tractor trucks as it relates to parking on residential driveways and parking in residential areas. Staff finds that since commercial truck parking can be provided in multiple locations across and inside the city limits by a private developer who's willing to meet the requirements that we mentioned, that we're recommending that we allow the private market to address the demand for commercial truck parking. Prepared to answer questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Revelle. You did say there was 4 locations in Killeen. That's north, south, east, west?
Well, there are, the slide mentioned that there is one location in the city of Killeen at the 3404 Veterans. And
No,
then
the 1,000 acres. You said 4 places in the city of Killeen that...
Yes, ma'am. So it's 2 things. So there are actual commercial truck parking locations. There's one in the city limits of Killeen, and then there are 3 in other cities, one in Harker Heights, one in Carper Cove, and one in Salado. And then about the 1,000 acres, that represents the available property that's properly zoned that would allow commercial truck parking to take place by the private industry.
That's 4?
Ma'am?
Maybe I'm missing something. Mr. Cahill.
I think there's many more than 4. There's
Okay.
No, so across the 1,000 acres where
Yes.
it could be possible, there's 71
Okay,
locations. And I need to be clear on that. Those 71 locations represents where commercial truck parking could take place. There are 3-acre sites and above, and they're also currently undeveloped.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I'm sorry about that, Mayor.
Oh, no, that's fine, that's fine. Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I want to thank the council again for agreeing to bring this request that I sent in to discuss this further. The presentation states on April 5th, 2022, the council made a motion of direction for staff to work with KDC on a plan to resolve the lack of commercial parking. The presentation highlights much of what we already know and what was already discussed in prior discussions, identifying the problem, stating the ordinance, and suggesting alternatives. The council previously determined to have staff discuss the issue with KEDC to come up with a potential plan. So my question is, where are the results of the report of staff working with KEDC to resolve the lack of commercial parking?
Sure. So we did have a conversation with KEDC related to commercial truck parking. A lot of that conversation resolved around, was there any available space that they were aware of that they could promote, market? It's my understanding that they are open to a discussion that could include having commercial truck parking within the business park, the existing business park. They're open to that, but I think we also have to consider, the opportunity costs. If that's a location that we want to consider for commercial truck parking, what else could have been there, that may provide more jobs, yield higher value to the community. So we did have that discussion with KDC, and it really kind of, resulted in there could be, more efforts toward, if that's something that the council wanted to pursue, seeking some kind of partnership with KDC to market a piece of land within the business park for commercial truck parking.
That's the kind of information that should have been in the presentation, in my opinion, because the council, again, was looking to see what KDC did propose. I'm looking to see how we could work on an initiative to complement this. One of the alternatives was to partner with a developer to provide financial incentives to facilitate development of commercial truck parking. Now we're learning outside of the presentation that the business park may be an opportunity to give folks an opportunity to park there. So I'm just curious what the council thinks on how we could work to help accommodate this need that was requested by citizens. Again, this was originally brought on in 2021 by former Mayor Pro Tem Williams, and this is just a follow-up on it. I'm still hearing from residents about truck parking. As you all know, off Mohawk, we had trucks parking just consistently every weekend over there. And I think what happened was the owner of that property determined to tow folks, which means we really have an exacerbated problem. And so again, I'd like to see what the council would like to move forward with this, as opposed to defaulting to allowing, the market to address the demand for commercial truck parking. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And Councilor, I do want to respond. What I should have said as a part of that 71 locations, I should have highlighted that location from the business park as one of those 71s.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Boyd. Councilmember Sagara.
Thank you, Mayor. And it goes further back than 2021 when we passed that ordinance, and I think it was, I don't know if it was 200 feet, then we had to go to 600 or 600 to 800, because from my recollection, I know it says I think, 600 or 800 there?
He said 600.
From my recollection, we even need to expand that. And of all things, this came about years ago because of the area that's being developed where we had that presentation on Clear Creek, because that area right there would become a truck parking. It had the streets in there and all that, and people would park their trucks there. And so all the residents there would always complain to me and all that. We had them come here, and that's when we passed that ordinance to restrict that. But I want to take what you said even a little bit further, because we have had that conversation with KEDC, and we even had an investor that was interested in buying some property to do that out there in our industrial park. So if you go back and talk to them and talk to the people that know the history of that, it's there, because this is a conversation that comes up every couple of years. And the challenge is not finding a location. I mean, we've actually located places that they can do it. And you know, and you mentioned it, it's just the opportunity cost. So the investor that we were incentivizing, and this is back when I was on KEDC many years ago, when it came down to looking at the overall cost and the liability, it's just very difficult to make it sense. And so we had an interested person where we were pretty much going to give them the property. But when it comes down to, you know, how many, because when it comes down to it, at the end, they have to charge these truck drivers. And so that's the key. It's how many trucks do you need to park there on a daily basis for you to be profitable, to cover your liabilities, your insurance, the security of these trucks. And those are things that we have to take into consideration if this is something that the city decides to take on. And so I'm with you, I'm with the staff, and I let the market take care of itself, because they know better. They know better than us. And the market can communicate with these major truck companies that have a lot of trucks that recruit here on Fort Hood all the time. They're here just about once a month recruiting soldiers, and these are major franchises that a private person, and I've talked to some of them that have had that conversation, but they're not willing to do it because it's not cost effective. And you're talking about a major truck driving company that says it's not going to be worth our effort or our investment. And so I just want to make sure that the council understands that we've had these conversations in the past, and if you talk to somebody there at KEDC that can pull up that research out of their bookshelves, it's there. And so I just want to make sure everybody understands that. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome, Councilmember Sagara. And we also had a person that came, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Cagle, a year or two ago, a female captain, I think it was a captain. Okay, Councilwoman Gonzalez going to go more detail with that. Go ahead on, ma'am.
So yes, I was just going to touch on that as well, because she did come before council. She was not necessarily seeking incentives and such. The question was, where do I go? They had already identified a swath of land that was not going to work for a number of different reasons, and the question with her and her agents were, okay, if this is the case, then where can we operate? So at that time, we did not have this data. We could not unequivocally say we've got 1,000 spaces or however many spaces we've got, that there's opportunity. So I think that information is huge. So I guess my question in general is, are we going to go back to not only her, but there's some other people that actually do have the means that we're not necessarily looking for incentives, but are we going to go back to those people to let them know that there is now an opportunity and here's where you may start to reconsider your development options?
Yes, ma'am. As long as we have all of the contact information, we don't mind reaching out and providing this additional information so that they can make the appropriate business decision. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gonzalez. Councilmember Alvarez.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Ravel. And I agree, this is one of those issues that's, there's no clear, concise answer to it. And I was sitting here contemplating and reading over your alternatives that you provided. And changing the all-weather surface requirement for commercial truck parking, to me, is a no. My main concern there is it has to be an impermeable surface to protect our groundwater supply from permeating fuels or oils or anything that may or could leak from the truck. trucks parking in residential driveways and residential areas. I honestly probably get more emails from citizens saying that they don't want them in their neighborhoods than truck drivers stating that they have an issue of lack of places to park. So I think that would be my main concern is if this was something that the council was going to move forward with, and possibly, we're talking about using taxpayer dollars to subsidize private business, which that happens all the time. But if that was something that was going to happen, is what is the need exactly, aside from the maybe dozen or so truck drivers that may email saying that they have an issue of place to park? Is this an endeavor where the juice is worth the squeeze? I don't know. We have roughly 160,000 tax-paying residents in the city of Killeen, so if there's 12 or 20 or 100 truck drivers, is that worth it? I don't know what that number looks like, so I'd be curious. Councilmember Segarra mentioned the fee. Obviously, again, if this was something where the city partnered with KEDC, what does that fee structure have to look like in order to get return on that investment? Or is this something that you're going to do for free? And then you also have to take into account the wear and tear on that all-weather surface. These trucks are heavy, just like trash trucks. They're going to, over time, wear and tear the parking area where they're going to park. So we're taking those future costs into account. And then, actually, that was my last thing. So I appreciate it. It's one of those things to where I think we would need, I would like to see more information on it if this was something that the rest of the council wanted to consider further. Because otherwise, I think it's, how do you make an informed decision with the information that we currently have? I think it'd be really tough to do. So, but thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Councilmember Alvarez. Before I go round to Councilmember Solomon, would you like to speak? Okay, thank you. Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And, I think the council needs and deserves the information from KEDC on what incentives would look like to make a decision on. I think then it would be appropriate to say yes or no. Again, this is a need from citizens who drive trucks in our community. And I'm just curious if there's a determination to work to resolve a communicated issue on behalf of citizens on the large truck parking issue. So with that said, I'll make a motion of direction for city staff to enter discussion with KDC to discuss potential incentives for council's consideration in the future.
Second.
All in favor, just show your hand. Yes. All opposed? Oh, wait a minute. No, I had something to say. I had to wait till everybody go through. Anyone else before I speak? All right. Mr. Revelle, I'd like to thank you and your staff for taking the time to come before us with this. This has been an ongoing issue. I have some concerns, but just based on what you just stated. Being a member of the KEC board, along with Mr. Cagle, Councilwoman Gonzalez, and Mayor Pro Tem, me personally, I don't think it's feasible to use KEDC land when we're constantly have outgrown most of it and we're trying to bring in new businesses. Therefore, we're trying to find more land because that's what we need, revenue. We need jobs, high-paying jobs for our community. I don't really want the city, and it's just my perspective on how I look at the comprehensive plan, how I envision our city growing. This is just the mayor's perspective. That the city, I'm sorry, did you have something? Oh, okay, Councilmember Segarra. That the city don't get in the truck business. But I also understand council members' perspective on that they are a part of our community. I would like to see, if feasible, even I think the motion will pass, that the land at the 71 minus the KEDC from my perspective, just mine, the 70 other areas. If we would talk to the owners and see, once the motion of direction that Councilmember Boyd proposed was that KEDC look into how much it would cost and bring back something, as Councilmember Alvarez stated, that something we can bite into. But also, I like Councilwoman Gonzalez's perspective. We have people that are interested in doing this and taking on the whole responsibility of having it. I think we also need to follow up on that. I think it's something that is needed because me personally, I don't want to wake up at 3, 4 in the morning when the truck is going in or out. The exhaust from it, the wear and tear on the street. We're putting a lot of money into our maintenance fee to ensure that we have drivable, safe streets for our residents and also our first responders. So, I don't know who brought it up, but Councilmember Segarra said it came up many years ago, and I do remember that, but it is worth relooking, but not the city going into the trucking business. And with KEDC, if we ask them to take that ownership, we have to look as a council within our budget, where we are going to get the revenue. So I think private ownership would be the best way from my perspective. And it's still open. Councilwoman Gonzalez, this is your second time.
Thank you. So I do support getting the additional information so that we can make an informed decision. I completely, though, believe that the private market should dictate, but I do also think it's important that the potential business owners and developers know what the options are. So for me, it's from that perspective. I'd like to know, what those options, or have them know what those options are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gonzalez. Councilmember Segarra.
Just want to clarify that motion again. What was the motion?
The motion is to have staff engage discussion with KEDC about potential incentives to be brought back to council for consideration.
And we had a second to that motion of direction from Councilmember Solomon. Yes, sir. All in favor, yes. All opposed, no. 1, 2. Okay, that's everyone. That's 5-0, Madam Secretary. Motion of direction. I give you time to get it all together. Oh, you're good. That's fast. Thank you, Mr. Rivera. We didn't even do a date. Okay, well, we'll get it when we get it. All right. With that being said, Madam Secretary.
DS 23066, Quarterly Financial Report.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mrs. Tangeling. I'm sorry, I was trying to see who was next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you, council members. I'm going to present the quarterly financial report. This will cover from October through March. The overview will be an executive dashboard with the staffing indicators, economic indicators, and we're going to review major operating funds. And at the end, we're going to look at the ARPA funding update. When you looking at the staffing indicators over here, you should focus into the separations. And the year-to-date separations are 124. And the right side, you have the new hires. And for fiscal year 23, up to March, there were 135. So we hire 135 new people, but we lost 124. For new construction permits at the single-family residential, we have 138 for fiscal year 23 compared to 277 from last fiscal year. This is your sales tax information, how the budget with actuals differs. We are consistent trying to increase the budget yearly, but the sales taxes keep increasing. This is the same information by month. And this is your sales tax breakdown by economic category, and you can see that 53.5% is retail. Now I'm going to go into the major funds. General fund, this is the percent of budget. And like I say, this is going to cover the first half of the year from October to March. So everything over 50% is good. And when it comes to revenues, taxes and fee always will be higher because we collect property taxes at the beginning of the year, and then we start spending down the money. So property taxes is about 90%. Sales taxes are a little bit over 50% collections. And franchise fees is 25%. Franchise fees is a quarter behind, meaning the last quarter we collect 50% of the franchise fees. For the total revenues for general fund, we collected 65%. For the expenditures, we have spent 44% of general fund. And then you will see here your ending fund balance. This will be your net change. It's at 20 million right now, but like I say, we collect all the property taxes from this point on. The net change will probably go down since we're not going to collect the property taxes. We're going to start spending the money down. The fund balance, I wanted to make sure that you all know the beginning fund balance reflects the new audit. The audit was finalized in March, so this is the new fund balance for the fiscal year 23. And the first quarter, we just showed an estimated beginning fund balance. Now I'm going to go water and sewer fund, and I will go a little bit quick on this one. So for water and sewer, the revenues are here. The operating revenue is 47%. The operating expenses is 45%. For the net position, beginning, it's 11.19, and the ending will be 12.55. The change in net position was 1 million in the plus. This is where the water revenues versus rainfall goes, and you can see the water revenue are the blue, and then this will tell you that the rainfall will affect the revenues. Now I'm going to solid waste. Your operating revenues percentage is 54%. Your expenditures are 44%. Your change in net position is 1 million, and your net position ended at 7.38. Now I'm going to drainage. Your operating revenues for drainage is 50%. Your expenses are 39%. Your change in net position is $320,000. So your net position ending is 1.6 million. We got aviation funds. Your operating revenues is 48%. Expenses 41%. Ooh. And you. Let me see, is this, what happened? There you go, sorry. Your net position, your change in net position is $460,000, so your ending net position will be 3.2 million for the aviation funds. Then we go into the hotel occupancy tax fund. We can see the total revenues for hotel occupancy tax fund was 47% of the budget, annual budget, and your total expenditures were 33%. So the net change in balance is $500,000. And you can see your fund balance ending for this quarter is 2.18 million. Finally, I have the street maintenance fund. And your street maintenance fee is percentage of budget collected is 50%. Your expenditures is only 31%. And your change in fund balance is 2.68, giving you a fund balance ending with 7.6 million. So this is all the major funds and the two special revenue funds that we presented in here. Now I'm going to give a quick update on the ARPA funding. So for the ARPA funding, for hotel occupancy tax allocations, we have spent 33.9% of all the allocations. You can see in the left side all the projects for the HUD fund. Then for general fund, we have public safety, premium pay, and other programs, and we have spent 69% of the allocated funds. For the CIP fund, we only have spent 50.4%. And in total, we have spent 32.4% of the allocated funds for ARPA. Now, for the ARPA fund, if you see the police range training facility, we have no spent money in here. And then I'm here today to request a motion of direction. For the police department tactical fighter range, the scope that they had before is not possible to complete that because the sound abatement and projectile containment cost exceeds funding available. So we want to change the scope. So we're requesting to change the scope to cover all these projects in here. We're going to cover as many items as possible with $250,000, but we need a motion or direction from the council to be able to change the scope and change the funding, allocating fundings from the firing range to these facility improvements.
I mean, who's doing the motion or direction? Councilmember Segar?
I just had a question on that first, because I really didn't understand that part. Is that funds coming from where? From the ARPA funding, or?
Yes, sir. So for ARPA funding, we allocated $250,000 for the police range and training facility.
Yeah.
Right. So we haven't spent the money in the first scope that they presented. It's not going to be, we're not going to be able to do that, because it goes about the funding available. So what police wants to do is, instead, they want to still work in the police range and training, but they want to change the scope as doing some improvements. And so by changing the scope, we need to ask council to give us the direct.
Oh, got it. So it's not like any of the money's there. The money is not changing. It's just changing,
the scope.
redefining what they're going to use it for, basically.
Yes, sir.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. So I can make that motion.
Please, someone make a motion.
I move that we.
Motion or direction.
Yeah, I move a motion or direction that we change the scope to what's on here.
I second it.
The motion of direction is for the $250,000 that are in the ARPA funding. The police department has changed their scope, and there is a motion of direction to utilize that for the items that is in the presentation. And all in favor of the motion of direction, just show a hand. Okay, that's 4-0. Let the record show that Mayor, Councilmember Boyd did not vote on this item. But he is here. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Tanglin. I think I'm sure, but I wouldn't be able to sleep if I didn't ask you, just to be sure. The scope that you're showing on this slide number 33,
yes.
Is that the revised scope?
This is what they want to do with the money. This is the revised scope.
Okay, so what they're not doing is the sound abatement and projectile containment?
That's correct.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And that's it for my presentation. If you have any questions?
Thank you, Councilmember Alvarez. Councilmember Gonzalez, and then I come back to you, Councilmember Alvarez.
Thank you. I
Okay.
left my little button on here. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Alvarez, this is your second time.
Thank you, Mayor. On slide number 30, specifically the Boys and Girls Club, I remember they were allocated $750,000 of the ARPA funding, and you show there's been no spending of that in FY '23. Do we know, or maybe Mr. Cagle, do we have an update on that project? Is it still moving forward?
It is moving forward, and you can see the construction over there. They're working on the foundation for the new gym and everything, and they're going to, I'm sure very quickly, they'll be submitting some more payment requests.
Thank you, Councilmember Alvarez and Mr. Cagle. Thank you very much, Ms. Tangling.
Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am. Madam Secretary.
DS 23067, discuss annual review of governing standards and expectations.
Thank you, ma'am. City Attorney Clemens. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening again. Thank you, Mayor, City Council. This is your governing standards item for your annual review. Just a little bit of background. Governing standards and expectations were originally adopted by resolution in June 2018, and they've been revised annually since then. The intent is for the governing standard to serve as a single source reference containing the council's rules, protocols, procedures, policies, and expectations for itself, committee members, staff, and the public. Section 720 of the document provides that the new city council shall begin review of the governing standards after the election and work to readopt an updated version by the end of July each year. So changes do require a supermajority vote of the council members present and voting, and that became effective last year, June 2022. So what that means is, so if you had all 7 council members present, 6 of 7 would have to vote. Right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 4 of 5, you're not voting tonight, but 4 or 5 would have to vote in favor of any updates. So on this slide is changes that have already been directed by council at various meetings. So section 280, council had directed to add the National Day of Prayer to the list of community events where the city will provide in-kind non-monetary services. And so I would point out that currently there are 13 community events listed. This edition would be 14, and that section allows for 3 additional events to be supported if funds are available. And so I just would like to get clarity if you have any on whether we're keeping that, so we're adding that to 14 events, and then plus the 3, or are you reducing that 3 to 2? That was a question I had. And then section 3-20E, you added a youth advisory commission to the list of the boards and commissions with city council appointment subcommittees. This one has a 3-member appointment subcommittee as opposed to the 2-member with the other committees. Those are the 2 directed changes. Other topics that have come up recently, and I'm just putting these out here for discussion if council would like to. Currently, agendas and documentation are to be provided to city council for workshops on the Wednesday before the meeting and for meetings the Friday prior to the meeting. So I'm including this as a discussion, as the Wednesday requirement does present a challenge sometimes to staff and requires revisions at times. So I'm putting that out there for discussion if you would like. And then the second item here is citizens petition and citizens comment process. We've included this as a discussion for council as you see fit. There are different ways that different cities structure citizen comment, city petition, and we can discuss those further if you'd like. So the alternatives are that the city council can continue discussions for further amendments to the governing standards and expectations, the ones that I've mentioned or others, obviously, or 2, readopt the governing standards and expectations as amended at a future meeting. And we can look at, if you know, depending on the scope and the complexity of the changes you have, I could bring those back next week. But if there are more discussions, obviously we can push that to July and continue conversation.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, City Attorney Clemens, because one of the concerns I do have that the Mayor Pro Tem Cobb is not here. So even if she's here on next week, and if she add to it, I don't know into what depth she will add to it. So what I would like from the council is that because the supermajority vote, I would like to address each issue one by one, like the first one you brought up, and you have 4 items on here, and then if the council member would like to add their own, then we can move from that perspective. So we can start with section 2.80, and you just need a motion direction, because here you say we have 14, but we have room for 3 more events. Or how did you state that, if I'm saying it wrong?
So the governing standards has a list of certain
Correct.
specific events that you are going to support, and so there's 13 now. This would add one, and there would be 14. The section also says that you can authorize an additional 3 events. And so my question, I guess, is if we're adding one to the list, are you changing are you leaving 3 additional events as is, or are you reducing that down to 2 to keep a total of 16?
Yes, ma'am. So when we add this one, it's 14, and we have 3 extra spaces. Okay, so that's something that's up, Councilmember Boyd, is this the item you want to discuss, or do you have another item?
Both this and
Okay,
another item.
yes,
So
sir.
I'm curious what the consensus is from the council on how we want to go about going through these discussions.
Do y'all want to do one by one? Because you still need a supermajority vote. So do you want to do one by one? And the reason I say that, because it may be 2 things in here that 2 people disagree with, and it's all together, then everything is gone. So it's up to you.
So, and I know I just posed a question, I have a response to that, actually. In my opinion, I think the first order of business should be for the council to consider eliminating this supermajority vote so that we can actually get some movement on any changes that need to be made to these governing standards, both now and in the future. When this was brought on last year, I was in favor of it, and I can say that I am no longer in favor of it for the sake of making necessary changes to the governing standards. Thank you.
I second that
And that's a motion.
motion of direction.
Favor? The motion of direction. 1, 2, 4. So what he stated that at first last year, they had a supermajority where everyone had to vote, but if 2 people decided not to vote on it, it wouldn't pass. So he made a motion of direction because last year they voted on it. He wanted to go back and change it. That it is not a motion of direction, a supermajority vote, that we just vote 4 to 3 or 3 to 2 instead of having a supermajority vote. So far, Councilmember Boyd, Councilmember Sagara, Councilmember Alvarez, and Councilmember Gonzalez is in favor of it, to getting rid of supermajority. So vote.
So this supermajority will go to, whether it's not like the quorum, the majority of the 7?
So now it would be like if, right now, that's why I want to wait till Mayor Pro Tem was here, but now we have like 3 to 2. It
Right.
only takes 3 to 2 to pass anything now. Instead of supermajority, if you have 6 or if you have 7, if 2 of the individuals decided, I don't want it, it won't pass.
But that's discussing this, right? The
Correct.
governing.
No,
It's
it's
not-
supermajority. What he just made a motion of direction was that we no longer do the supermajority vote.
As it pertains to the governing standards conversation now only.
Got you.
Just that. So I'm just waiting on you to vote up or down. Are you in favor of it?
No.
Okay, so the motion is carried, direction is carried 4 to 1 with Councilmember Solomon not in favor of it. The floor is yours, Cigar.
No, what I wanted, and you mentioned it, Mayor, you were going to do one item at a time, and I think for the most part, some of these items here, I think are a given that they're okay. I mean, I'm okay with 2-80, National Day of Prayer, because I think we already do that, if I'm not mistaken, Mayor?
Yes, are we doing item 1 by 1, or how you want to do it? Someone make a motion or direction. You do 1 by 1, or how you want to do it?
Well, I was just doing that.
Okay. So we're on item section 2-80, add National Day of Prayer to the list of community events where the city will provide in-kind, non-monetary services.
And my question was, and because we already do that, because I know we do have a National Day of Prayer, and we come together here in this council, we have different people coming and doing prayer. So is that what we're talking about? 'Cause that's-
Correct.
So if that's the case, then I make a motion of direction to approve that.
Second.
All in favor, yes? The motion, we already did this one. That's how she put it up, that we already did a motion of direction to add this.
To add the National Day of Prayer to our
Governor's standards. Yes,
Yes, on these slides, I was just showing, these have already been
They've been
directed. These
approved.
two have already been directed. They've been directed to be changed. What I would do is take the ones that have already been directed and then any directions you have from tonight, and then I would incorporate those changes into the document. Bring the document back, and you'll see the red lines, and that's what you would approve with the changes.
So these two, we don't have to worry about, they're already there, right?
You've already directed these. I don't
Okay.
believe you need to direct them again.
all right, so the next slide you had, all right.
And then the next one, I still
It's
got the
this
floor,
one.
right? So the next floor is, my recommendation is just to kind of standardize everything. Instead of having the workshop agenda come out on a Wednesday, the council on a Friday, and I know the staff needs more time, just make it standard that they both come out on Friday as we had it before. It makes it much easier. So I make a motion that we change it to kind of standardize.
The motion of direction is to have the workshop and the council meeting both to come out on Friday.
The agendas, yeah.
Okay.
Question.
Councilmember Boyd?
Thank you, Matt. Was there a second?
No.
I second and then I have a question. Would it be a challenge for staff to move it to Thursday as opposed to Wednesday or Friday? Just for my own edification.
Well, for us, Thursday's better than Wednesday, so that's an improvement.
Okay. My personal preference, I'm just one council member, is Thursday, but the majority is Friday. It will be Friday.
So the motion of direction is for Friday. All in favor, yes? That's the motion of I know y'all all looking at each other, see how.
Seconded.
Yeah, everybody trying to see how people gonna vote. I mean, motion of direction. It's Friday. That's the motion of direction. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4-1. The motion of direction is to move it to Friday. The next one we have, Councilmember Solomon, this is yours, that you had the citizen petition / citizen comment process. Oh,
Thank you,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry. Excuse me, they down there talking, I'm sorry. He just reminded me that he had the floor, but I knew you brought, so please yield to him. Councilmember Sagari's back to you.
My comment was that, Mr. Solomon, this one's yours.
Thank you, sir.
We have so much time to waste.
On this one, with citizens petition, citizen comment process, I would like to have a motion of direction to allow the citizens to speak on any subject that they would want for a matter of 3 minutes in the citizen comment, because I believe that we ought to allow the citizens to speak on what they want. And, but allow it for 3 minutes for a certain amount of time, 15, 20 minutes. I'm talking about the period of that, because if you do have 20 people come up, you got to cut it off sometime or another. So I'm saying for 3 minutes, or we can just say 3 minutes, and but allow them to speak on subjects not on the agenda.
So, in my understanding, just for clarity, we have citizen petitions where you can come up and talk for 4 minutes on anything you want to talk to. And then we have citizen comment, and that is to talk on what's on the agenda. So I guess my question is, what is the difference between the citizen petition where you can talk about anything and citizen comments just to talk 3 minutes? Well, I'm trying to see what is the difference with what we already have and what you're proposing.
Well, I believe the citizen petition, you have to sign, you have to put it on the agenda. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be the difference, is that you have to sign up well in advance and
Right.
put your agenda item to get it actually printed on the agenda, rather than just showing up the night of and being able to
Right.
speak on any topic.
So we'll have the citizen petition, the citizen comment, and what she's proposing, another citizen comment, or you can talk about
No,
anything?
I'm saying eliminate, we have the citizens comment only what's on the agenda. So I'm saying to change that to say for what they would like to speak on.
And if I could respond to that, I
Please.
think if you were to change the citizen comments for the citizens to be able to speak on any topic, not just limited to what's on the agenda, then it would make the citizens petition unnecessary.
Go
So
away.
you would just have the citizen comments and they could speak on any topic, I think is what
Yeah.
I'm hearing, yes.
Okay, so do you do your motion of direction, which is what you're asking is that we get rid of the citizen petition and that the citizen comment, no matter what's on the agenda, they can talk about any item plus what's on the agenda for 3 minutes.
Yes, and I would add, just for council information, a couple things. One, council would need to be very diligent and make sure that while the citizens could come up and speak on any item, you would make sure that council would not be deliberating or discussing any item that's not on the agenda. And so there can be a short factual information or request to put place and something on the agenda. But that's what's important when you have it on the agenda where you're allowing citizens to talk about on any topic. It's just very important that council be aware of that limitation, that there can't be any additional discussion of that topic that's not on the agenda.
So they
You can
have
put it
to-
on a future agenda, or you can have a short factual explanation
So the
response.
council is accountable for governing themselves.
Definitely.
Or I have to say you off the agenda, or we can't do that, and I don't really want to do that. So, make your motion of direction, see if we get a second.
So again, I make a motion of direction that we would eliminate the citizens petition, and we would eliminate citizens commenting only on what's on the agenda, and that they can comment or speak on anything for 3 minutes.
Okay? Do we have a second to that motion of direction? A second to the motion of direction? Motion of direction
Second.
died.
It's got a second, and definitely got a question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, it's not your time right now, but okay.
Okay.
So we have a motion of direction that we get rid of the citizen petition, and with the citizen comment, they can talk about anything, even if it's not on the agenda. That was by Councilmember Solomon, and the second was by Councilmember Boyd. Councilmember Alvarez, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. And I agree with the intent of what you're saying, and I think there's definitely, this is one of the items that I think needs some improvement and clarification. But several questions, and I think one of them was brought up earlier. So if you have 100 residents that come and want to say something, and they each get 3 minutes, so are we here for 300 minutes? Is there a limit? Are we going to say the first 15 minutes of a meeting is allocated towards this, or is there a cap on, so where do you draw that distinction. I think that needs to be spelled out clearly so there's no confusion for the citizens and they say, well, you know, I stood in line this whole meeting to say something and now you're not going to let me talk. So I think whatever we do, we need to make sure that it's clear and concise and we're communicating that message out to the citizens so that they're aware of this change and how it's going to work, and there's no surprises when they're up here at the podium speaking. So that's my concern, is whatever the process is going to be, I think it needs to be well thought out and well communicated out to the citizens. So,
Can I respond?
I do want to respond on the issue of capping the number or the time with regard to, so let me just a little bit of background. So regarding to comments of things that are on the agenda, state law under the Texas Open Meetings Act requires the city to allow any member of the public to speak on any item on the agenda. And so you would not be able to cap or limit the number of people speaking on an item on an agenda, but you could possibly cap the time limit or number of people on items not on an agenda. If to do that, I've seen it, one city actually split it up. Most cities, I will say, that we compare to, most of our comparable cities, I've kind of looked out there to see what else is out there. Most cities just have one citizen comments and it opens it up to any item, and they don't have limits on, they have limits on time limits per person, but not any limits on how many people can speak at all. There is one city I've seen where they have citizen comments on the agenda up front, on the agenda like we have now, and then that's only items on the agenda, and then they have a second item for public comments on anything else at the end. And if you had that, you could possibly cap that because that wouldn't be limiting comments on items on the agenda that are required to be there. So comments on the agenda are required to be there per state law. Petitions about anything off of the agenda at a public business meeting basically are not required, but if you allow them, you might be able to limit them in some way.
Councilmember Alvarez, are you finished, sir?
I am for now. It's just, I would again just reiterate that I think it needs to be well thought out, whatever that's going to be. And I don't know if we're going to accomplish that here tonight or if this is something that we need to, again, for the sake of not putting something out that's not clear and is not well thought out, and then we have to go back and make changes to it. I just want to exercise a little bit of caution, but I will go with the will of the council.
Councilmember Segar.
I was just going to kind of reemphasize what the attorney says, and the reason that people do have to speak on the agenda item is because a lot of times, you know, you have people out here that bring something forward to the council, but we as a council can't discuss that. And so, you know, they're talking about something, but then we can't, since it's not an agenda item, state law, we cannot speak about it. So we just look at them and say, well, thank you very much. And so when it's on the agenda, then, you know, you can have that conversation. And I think that will kind of be a little bit upsetting to people. I know that sometimes even when items are on the agenda and people do talk and they don't get no questions, they're like, you know, did somebody hear? And so I'm really not in favor of just kind of opening it all up to everybody on everything, because, I mean, it's things that we can't do anything about. Yeah, we can't have that discussion or do anything. And for that, I think that the system that we have now, where they can reach out to an individual council member, and if it's important enough to put there as a citizen's petition, then that's better, you know, from my perspective. And then the citizens comment, kind of keep it with agenda items on things that we're going to be discussing that night. And if it's something that they want, reach out to us. You know, that's our way to engage, so that if we can't solve that problem, we can put it on as a agenda item or citizens petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sagara. Councilmember Boyd, this is your second time.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I concur with Councilman Alvarez and Councilman Sagara on this. I do think it should be fine-tuned through continued discussion. At the same time, there should be a place for this. For example, we had a representative from LULAC who wanted to communicate that their appreciation of the city partnering with them and Moss Rose for the cooling centers that we're going to have here shortly, and there's not that opportunity to communicate that, so I can understand it. If it was my idea, it would be open up for 1 minute, and we do it for about 15 minutes, and let that be it per meeting. But I do want to emphasize as well, there is an existing system in place for folks to talk about what's on the agenda and what's not on the agenda. It's just not the most favorable. But we do work to make these meetings efficient, as the mayor is doing her best to do. And I think that's something also to take into consideration. But the question I had was for the city manager, your experience in several cities across the state. What have you seen similar to what's being proposed, and how has that worked out in a meeting in real time?
I think there's quite a combination. We're the only ones that I know of that do the citizen petition. I don't know of anyone else that does that. I think the majority, like the city attorney was reaching out to others, just have a citizen comment period for items not on the agenda and do their best, and the council does their best not to respond. Just like the city attorney said, either give a statement of policy or fact or discuss putting it on a future agenda and limit it to that. I don't think anybody's happy with the way any of it works anywhere. So we're not the only ones that have trouble with this or discussions or wish that there was a better way to do it. But I think the most common way is probably just some public comment period on items not on the agenda.
Thank you for that. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Boyd. So I guess I'll talk last. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you. So Mr. Cagle kind of touched on the initial question that I had, which was regarding the efficiency of that process, because there is so much to discuss in any given meeting. How do we make sure that we're efficient? If we're not able to respond to the citizens, then to what benefit is that to have them speak if there's no response that can be given during that 1 or 2 minute time frame, versus I completely believe in a citizen-centric approach. But our citizens requested the group town hall that we do at the October-November timeframe. They also requested that we start doing more town halls, and so hopefully that would mean that they would start to engage more through those town halls. Also, our citizens, I've had one, which you'll see tonight, was a citizen request. Several of them requested an item to be put on the agenda, and I honored that request. So that's how they were able to use their voices to have a discussion item put on, and I honored that for them. So I don't personally feel that there's a need for that. Unless somebody can tell me how it's going to be effective and help us be more efficient, because they can technically do all of that right now. They can present multiple ways to us to get information for discussion. But if we can't respond, then what is the purpose of that? If somebody can provide me clarity, I'll be happy to listen.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gonzalez. And then Councilmember Solomon, this is your second time, and then I will speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't think it's about responding as much as it is about listening to our citizens, giving them the opportunity to speak. All the municipals around us do it. They've been doing it for years. And you can go surrounding cities, you'll see we're the only ones, like the council member, city manager mentioned. I believe that I believe it's a process. The process is listening to our citizens, what they have to say to us in a council meeting, not just going out and listen to them, which I think that's good. I think that we ought to go out, we ought to be able to allow our citizens, we said we are fair, we're transparent, then we ought to allow them to speak for 3 minutes. And you can put a cap on it. You can say 15 minutes, as we have been told that we could do for those comments that's not on the agenda. So I don't think it's a big as problem as we think that it is, just to listen to the citizens for 3 minutes. 3 minutes. And we don't have to say anything. Just let them share. Let them give us feedback of what they think. That's all I'm saying. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Solomon and Councilwoman Gonzalez. This is your last time.
Thank you for that clarity, sir. Mr. Cagle, you mentioned that in other cities, they don't have citizen comments at all. And then, Madam Attorney, you mentioned that it's not an abnormal practice for us to have.
He said citizen petition.
Citizen's petition, I'm sorry. Thank you. Citizen petition is not normal or seen in a lot of cities. But then I was a little confused on the capping versus no capping. So if we have the items that are on the agenda that they are able to speak on, then there is the open mic where they can speak on anything that's not on the agenda. Is capping is that considering saying 15 minutes for this window? Is that a cap, or how does that work then in these other cities with regards to that window? Or if you have 100 people show up and 100 people, 75 or 80 of them have some agenda, some not, how do you divide that up in that time frame, 1 minute or 3 minutes? How does that work in these other cities?
Let me just clarify.
Thank you.
On what I've seen, and city manager may be aware of some other things, but on the cities that I've seen, they just have one citizen comment period of time where citizens can speak on anything on the agenda or off the agenda. So any item open. So, and it's not, and there's no cap. So the talk of a cap was if I haven't seen any caps anywhere, and that's generally because the they're not separated. There's only citizen comments, and that's on any item, no cap. Because under state law, I don't believe you can cap the number of people to speak on an item on the agenda. So if you wanted to do caps at all, which I have not seen, but if you wanted to do that, you would need to separate those out into citizen comments on the agenda and then public comments off agenda topics. And then you could have, I've heard various things of 1 to 2 minutes or 15 minutes total, or a number of people, you could do that. And if you had a list of people, I'm just throwing things out, just thinking this through. If you had 100 people that wanted to speak, but we only had, the 15 minutes, we could have a list of them, and we could say, okay, you can start next week. You can be the first people next week, something like that. If you wanted to separate it out, again, that is not the norm of what I've seen. The norm of what I've seen in other cities is just one citizen comments period for anything on the agenda or off.
Thank you. And so my one time, I can understand individuals, our residents and individuals want to give a comment. Like someone brought something up to me tonight and wanted to talk about it, and it was not on the agenda. Because we're accountable to the Open Meeting Act. We have to follow what's on the agenda, and our city attorney constantly drilled that on us, and that's probably one reason that we're all, I know for me, sticking to it, because we got rolled up in the paper about not following the Open Meeting Act. And I know a lot of people attend the meetings and they don't know how that works from a perspective that why I can't say what I want to say. So I can understand what Councilmember Solomon is saying, just to say thank you. I could have said that, but then I know I'm out of the Open Meeting Act, and I just try to follow it. Here go my concern. We tried this years ago. I know Councilmember Sagara can attest to this, where we had comments, people would come up and discuss, and the things that they needed could have been grass. It could have been a number of things that our city staff was not properly prepared to answer, which caused more chaos. So I can understand, but as a council member and as mayor, it is our responsibility, and I receive emails every day, a concern, and I agree with Councilwoman Gonzalez, that if we know there's an item that the majority of our residents, or even some of our residents would like to discuss, it should be put on the agenda to discuss. I don't think that we got a grip on just open it up, and I agree with Councilmember Alvarez that we got to have something in writing on how do we move forward, and Councilmember Boyd and Alvarez stated you cannot do it in this one setting. So I'm going to give it to Councilmember Sagara, and the council will make their decision, but I think the citizen petition is great because they have that 3 minutes devoted to whatever he or she would like to talk about. Now, we can take the stipulation off of that more so to say, hey, here go the citizen petition. They send it and we put it on the agenda to discuss it. And let them talk about what they want to talk about, either way. But it has to be some kind of, I just believe we should stick to the agenda and just don't have it out there everywhere. So Councilmember Sagara.
I just had a clarifying question on that because, the city attorney mentioned that, we'd have where they can speak on items that are not on the agenda, and then they can speak on items that were on the agenda. And if a person speaks on an item that's not on the agenda, can they come back and speak on an item that's in the agenda? And I just wanted to clarify that.
If you split it up like that, and you had one citizen comments area, and then you had the citizen comments on agenda, and then you had a separate one for citizens comments not on the agenda, that would be 2 different opportunities.
Yeah, so then we would go from 4 to 6 minutes. Okay, I just want to.
In that.
So, I was almost getting ready to go along with Mr. Solomon because I think it's good, open it up for 3 minutes because I think that's it. But given that right there, I think that creates that, opportunity that we, like somebody mentioned here, add another 3 minutes to that, let me exaggerate here, 100 people, and now we got another 300 minutes added to that council agenda. And so, yes, we want to listen to the people, but I think that the way we have it now, as I mentioned before, it's much better. I want them to come and reach out to me. I want them to come and say, hey, I got this problem. And if it's something that needs to come forward before the council, then I can put it on, I can request to be put on the agenda through our citizens petitions. So, thank you.
All right, that's everyone. All in favor of the motion of direction, raise your hand. The motion of direction is getting rid of the citizen petition. And for citizen comments, residents can talk whatever they want to talk about in 3 minutes. So all in favor, raise your hand. 1. All opposed? 1, 2, 4. So 1 in favor, 4 opposed. Now we can open it up with any council member, anything you want to add, take away from the, okay, council member Alvarez.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, like I stated before, I agree with
We can't,
what,
once we make a motion of direction on something, we can't go back to it.
I'm not going back,
Okay.
I'm simply
All right,
making
sir.
a statement. I agree with what Councilmember Solomon is wanting to do. What I disagreed with was the process and the lack of clarity to the motion. So I don't have an issue going away from the citizen petition process and going to a consolidated citizen comment process where citizens can speak on something on the agenda or not on the agenda. Again, my caution was coming up with something that is clear and concise and how that's going to be managed and what those time constraints look like for staff and the residents. That way we can put something out that's clear and understandable. So that's what I have to say.
And you still talked about it. Councilmember Boyd, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's one other recent adoption, well, last year to the governing standards that I do believe we should turn over. It's kind of probably going to generate the same type of discussion from this item, but the presentations being pulled from the council meetings, I do feel like those should be made from the consent agenda. I think if we reduce the council members' comments to maybe 1 minute so that we can remain efficient, that would be appropriate. To be honest with you, ever since last year, and we do a consent agenda, and we don't go through that presentation, it irks me every time because I'm thinking about the individuals sitting here, and I'm thinking about the people that watch that are not getting that presentation. And I'm sure every one of them was like, what was that about? Or I need to go research that. But when you have that in real time, at least just the presentation, it's beneficial. And so I would make a motion to.
Can I ask you one quick question
Yes,
before you do that?
Mhm.
So would you just clarify one thing? So the consent agenda, and you said 1 minute. So are you saying, because I don't know.
Sure.
Do you want them to just have the slides up there, or do you want them to come up and speak for 1 minute on the slides without going through all of them?
I would propose staff come and go through the presentation.
Okay,
And
got
if council members have a question, they've got just 1 minute, because we've had time to go through this, email questions, all that other stuff.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. City Attorney?
Clarification, are you talking about, when you're talking about consent agenda for workshop or both for meeting? The reason for my question is because in your governing standards, consent agenda is only, the format of your agenda is only detailed for the meeting itself. I know that there was a separate item and a motion of direction given outside of your governing standards, but there was a motion of direction given regarding consent agenda on workshops, that we wouldn't present all the presentations unless they were pulled off the consent agenda for workshops. But that is actually not in your governing standards. And so that's the reason for my question here, because I think you're about to make a motion about changing the governing standards about, well, I think what you're talking about is workshop consent agenda?
Yes.
And that's not in your governing standards?
Well, it would.
You could add it.
You could.
Yeah, that's what you're asking, really, is just to add it. Yeah.
Okay.
And at this point, I'd like to hear from the council, right? If it's the council's desire to do it for the workshop or the regular meeting or both. I do believe at least one time, and maybe the regular meeting would be the time to include those presentations. So before I make a motion, I'd like to see where everybody may be on that.
In his motion of direction he's getting ready to make is that the consent agenda for the workshop, we do not see it unless we call staff member up to do it. And then when it comes to the council meeting, we don't see the slides if it's a consent agenda item. But he wants that during the consent agenda item at the council meeting, that the staff have to present it. And that's the motion he's getting ready to make. But he wants your input too.
Not necessarily,
Okay,
Madam
not
Mayor.
that way?
Sure, I'm curious to hear from the council what the preference is to do the presentation during the workshop or the regular meeting.
Okay. Okay, I just thought you said just the council meeting. Okay.
I'll make a motion if no one has.
Yes. Do anyone have anything to say? Oh, yes, we do. We have plenty. We do. We have plenty. Okay, Councilmember Cigar.
Yeah, I just want to clarify what the motion here is, and
It
from my
wasn't a
understanding.
motion of direction because there was no second, so he just opened it up.
Yeah, and I'm willing to second it, but I just want clarity here. Because, obviously, I think my thing is you have to, if you're going to have a presentation, it has to be done at the workshop, not at the council meeting, because we need the information. We're going to learn about a week prior to us actually voting on that. So, you have to have that presentation there at the workshop. But I think if I heard you right, what he said is in response to us as council members, right now, we can respond to them. And how many minutes do we have?
We have, you have 5 minutes, like right now, if we did something, you have 2 times to speak for 5 minutes.
2 times to speak. And
And
so
most
what
people
your
don't use it up.
recommendation is to cut that down to one, right?
Only for the items that would be within the consent agenda. Our resolutions, PH, that would stay the way it already is. Does that make sense?
No.
Right.
Okay, so right now we have the consent agenda, right? We have no presentation. I'm proposing to have the presentation, and for these items, council members get 1 minute to ask questions on. When we go to the RS section of the agenda or the public hearings, the time limits that are already in place remain.
Yeah, I got it. And so I like to make things easy, and I think I kind of like what he says, cutting down the time, but I think 1 minute is too short. And if we can do it all across the board, I know as mayor, it's hard to keep track, where we're at, how many minutes, who spoke.
Right.
And so.
But at the workshop, if that's what you're saying, Councilmember Sagara, he stated, we have to have the 5 minutes for council to ask questions and really understand what they're saying. To take that 5 minutes from them and get 1 minute, then why are we even doing it in the workshop?
No, and I agree, that's what I'm saying. Maybe 1 minute is too short. Maybe, I don't think most of us here speak for 5 minutes. Maybe come down to a 3 minutes straight across the board, just like our citizens. We give them 3 minutes. We can do 3 minutes too. So it's like, why not just change it 3 minutes straight across the board, make it easy? And
When you say straight across the board, we only talking about the consent agenda, correct? Or you talking about the whole agenda for the council?
Yeah, the whole agenda, everything. It's like you got 3 minutes.
I agree with you, but when we get to planning and zoning and things that.
Per item. I'm not saying the whole, but just like what we do now. But instead of 5 minutes and what else, we got 3 minutes, right?
No, sir, we have 5 minutes down, we have 5 minutes all the way. We only have that 1 minute if a citizen come up and they want to talk, we want to respond 1 minute. But the 5 minutes is much needed on consent agenda if the council decide that they want all the presentations to be done in the workshop. And then when we're talking about resolutions, I think that's very important. Anytime we talk about that in public hearing for our public hearing, because if we doing ordinance or any resolutions in that manner, or are we doing zoning, or we voting on putting a bar in, or whatever it might be, I think the council, this is big, those items. So 3 minutes I can see for consent, but the rest of it we have to discuss.
Well, I don't think we've spoken for 3 minutes. I mean, because the way we have it, if we do it right, the clock stops when they're speaking. It's
We've
only
been
for.
doing 5 minutes, and some of us, like me and you and Councilmember Boyd, we long-winded.
Well, that's
And so
why we want to go to 3
maximize
minutes.
hours. I don't know about everybody else, but we use hours.
That's why we want to go to 3, maybe 1 minute
It's
is
his
good
motion.
enough.
It's his motion, but I'm gonna come, are you finished, Councilmember Sagara? Because you still have 2 minutes and 56 seconds. I know we use them. I mean, we do. So the
And I
floor
think
is
you used
yours.
most of mine, right? Because that
No.
clock kept going when I was.
No, they stop when I talk. When I speak, it stops.
No, I'm good. You see, I didn't use it all up.
You didn't. Okay, Councilmember Boyd, I'm gonna come back to you because you went first. So I'm gonna hear from Councilmember Alvarez.
Councilmember Boyd's question to the rest of the council was if we thought that the consent agenda items should be presented at the workshop and/or the meeting. My response, sir, would be definitely at the workshop. I think they should be presented for everyone to see and hear. And then beyond that, if there is further questions or if a council member, maybe it is something that requires more thought or discussion, then that council member could ask for it to be presented again at the meeting. But it wouldn't automatically be presented again at the meeting unless you asked for it because it was just presented the week before in great detail at the workshop. So that's my response to that, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Solomon.
I concur. That's what I was going to say. At the workshops, I think it's best at the workshop we can get a better understanding. and you're talking about the consent items, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, for sure. We need to open that up so we can understand, and then the public can see what's going on. And, I like that 3 minute. I like that 3 minute. Yep, that's all.
Yes, sir, you still have time if you would like to use it.
Well, I think we could streamline some things if we just, cut the time down. I mean, if you got more questions, maybe we can get with staff or whatever, but I think 3 minutes is good. I like that, Councilman Cigar.
Oh, thank you, sir. Councilwoman Gonzalez.
Thank you. To answer your question, I do agree that workshop is 100% where it should be, the way we can discuss and have that conversation. I do also agree that the 3-minute window is perfectly sufficient to be clear and concise, ask our questions, and then that would give them just the presentation at the workshops only.
Now, Councilmember, are you finished, Councilwoman Gonzalez?
It's a presentation at the workshop only, but still the opportunity to pull it if we needed to for any reason. I think that should still be available, but the presentation, I do agree, should be at the workshop.
Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Boyd, the floor is yours.
Thank you for, thank you for the feedback. I make a motion of direction for staff to make the presentations during the consent agenda of workshops, and for council members to have the ability to request presentation during the regular meeting if requested, at the length of 3 minutes.
A second.
No, he's good.
Oh, I'm sorry. Good.
The motion of direction was made by Councilmember Boyd. I don't know between Solomon and Sagara.
Yeah.
Okay, are you saying him?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Solomon.
Councilmember Solomon. All in favor of the motion of direction? Yes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5-0. All right. Madam Secretary, Councilmember request for future agenda item.
Madam Mayor, the city attorney is
Oh, yes, ma'am.
I just wanted, on a 3 minutes, I didn't catch the 3 minutes. That was a 3-minute limitation on Councilman?
3-minute limitation on our council members' questions during that discussion item.
Okay, because for workshop right now, it's 2 5-minutes, so we're doing 1 3-minute, or we're talking about 1 3-minute? Okay,
One
for the consent. All right, thank you,
Yes,
just
ma'am.
wanted clarification.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I apologize, Madam Secretary.
Thank you. We are on RQ 23-008. Consider an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 6, Animals.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilwoman Gonzalez?
Thank you, Madam. This was an opportunity for a citizen that, several of them that requested relook and reconsideration for the ordinance. So out of respect for my citizens and giving them the opportunity to open this further for discussion, I requested it to be put on the agenda today.
How kind of you.
But I told them as well that the council has to make that determination if we open it for further discussion.
Yes, ma'am. I couldn't hear you. What you say, Councilwoman?
I did explain that council would have to make that determination if we're able to open it back up for discussion.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gonzalez. Councilmember Boyd?
Yes, second.
There was no motion.
Okay. I thought
She
there was
just got it open for discussion.
That's my mistake.
It was an ordinance that was put in place, and they want us to open it up, to go back to the ordinance and make some changes to it.
What were your thoughts on that?
So she just want to know, just for future agenda item, what's your thoughts on going back? Okay, Councilmember Boyd, and I'll get you later, Councilmember Sagar.
I'm personally not too familiar with why this might be necessary, but off the surface, I would recommend not going back at this time.
Thank you. Councilmember Sagara.
I want to make a comment first, and then I'll second it. And the comment is, I know there's been a lot of confusion.
There's no motion of direction.
Oh, okay. Well, I second.
Sir, there's no motion of direction. He just made a comment just like you about to make. I know you're getting tired. Come on, Councilmember Sagara, hang in there.
All right. But what I wanted to say was, I mean, there's been a lot of confusion, and I know that what I want is clarity from the animal advisory. That's what we get these volunteers, and I would like to send this back to the proper place, which is the Animal Advisory Committee, and see, if they can come, because when they originally came,
Sir, I apologize, but this is just for us to vote to put this as a future agenda item.
Okay.
So
But
is
I'm
that
just kind of saying why I'm in support of not bringing it forward. So my motion is no.
Oh, no, okay, I'm sorry.
With explanation.
Yes, sir. Okay, so anybody else, before I go back to Councilmember Board, before I call for yes or no?
I second.
There's no motion. I keep on, what was your motion? Oh, okay, motion of direction, thank you. I know, I'm asleep at the wheel. And then we have a second by Councilmember Board. Did you get that, Madam Secretary? Okay. I'm just waiting whenever you're ready. All right, so it's no. All in favor, motion of direction to not bring this back? Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4. All opposed? Of course. Yes, ma'am. Councilwoman Gonzalez, she's smiling. All right, motion did not carry. So, I'd like to thank the police and fire department. They did an excellent job. And Miss, one of the things that we talked about that was brought up is Miss Annalisa. She just wanted to thank the staff and everyone that participated in helping out with opening up the cooling center. Because I know I got a lot of phone calls. Mr. Perez, Councilwoman Gonzalez, Mr. Cagle, Councilmember Boyd, Fire Chief Kabisky, and we really had started working on this a long time, way before this came out, but it just needed, one thing I just want to say this, I thank her too, volunteering and giving back to the community and doing what you do, LULAC and all the rest of them, but without volunteers, we cannot make this happen. Peter Perez, my hat off to you. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Councilmember Alvarez and Councilwoman Gonzalez, Boyd. Okay, Gonzalez. I know, one of them push it and the other one say it, so it's kind of like, okay. So, all in favor? Aye. 5-0. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Council, excellent job.